Welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. Still having trouble sleeping? Don't worry. I'm here to share paranormal stories from around the world and hopefully help you drift off a little easier tonight. Thanks for sending in your experiences. Drop a comment below and let us know how these stories made you feel, or share your own. And if you don't want to miss the newest videos, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. So, are you ready? Put on your headphones, switch on your nightlight, get comfy in bed, and let's begin. You know, people usually talk about the hungry ghost realm, preta, all that, as if it's some spooky punishment that happens after you die. But the older I get, the more it feels less like mythology and more like a really familiar headspace people slip into while they're still alive. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, almost politely. It's that state where you keep wanting things, but nothing really satisfies you for long. Even when something genuinely good happens, something you would have sworn would make you feel settled, there's no real sense of arrival. The mind just pivots. It reaches for the next thing before the last one even has time to land. Because normally, wanting is supposed to have an ending. You eat, and the hunger stops. You finish a project, and there's a pause. Your system is meant to exhale for a moment before it leans forward again. But in this state, the exhale never comes. You get what you wanted, and instead of feeling full, there's this low-grade restlessness, like a motor that never switches off. It's as if the mind forgot how to stop tilting toward the future. And honestly, the old image of the hungry ghost, big belly, tiny throat, makes more sense to me now than it ever did as a kid. Because there's no shortage of input. News, music, apps, messages, options, invitations, goals. It's endless. But somehow, so little of it actually nourishes you. Life keeps tapping the surface without feeding anything deeper. I catch it in myself in small, almost embarrassing ways. I'll finish something I cared about, like putting the final line on a piece of writing, or having one of those conversations that feels real and human. And instead of letting myself feel it, I'm already scanning for the next hit of meaning. Next task, next plan, next idea. There's no gentle inner voice that says, "That was enough. You can rest now." It's just movement. Forward, forward, forward. And the weirdest part is, nothing is actually missing in those moments. I'm not in crisis. I'm not deprived. On paper, things are fine. But it still feels like something is missing. Like there's an emptiness that doesn't match reality. That mismatch is what gets me. There's this teaching that hungry ghosts look at clean water and see it as fire, or as something filthy. And to me, that isn't about monsters. It's about how perception warps when the mind is trapped in scarcity. Even good things don't feel safe to enjoy. A calm afternoon starts to feel like I'm wasting time. A good experience starts to feel like it's already slipping away. Gratitude gets replaced by comparison before I even notice it happening. It's like my mind keeps asking, okay, but what's next? What's better? What if this doesn't last? And I don't think that comes from being greedy or selfish. Not really. It feels more like forgetting how to let experiences land in the body. The mind stays busy, but the nervous system never actually settles. Like I'm living 2 inches above my own life. The one thing that seems to interrupt it, at least for me, is generosity. Not some grand, heroic thing. More like giving someone my full attention, helping in a small way, sharing time, offering something without keeping score. No hidden trade. No quiet expectation that it'll come back around. When I do that, even briefly, something unclenches. The constant reaching stops for a second. Not in a fireworks way, not like a spiritual high, more like a plain human feeling of, oh, this is okay. right now is okay. The hunger eases, just enough to notice what it feels like to be here. So when I think about the hungry ghost realm now, I don't picture flames or creepy figures. I picture something painfully ordinary. A human mind always leaning forward, rarely arriving. And the way out seems less about getting more, and more about finally letting something, anything, be enough. Okay, so I'm not totally sure of the exact time, but if I had to guess, it was somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning. You know that part of the night where it's still dark, but the world feels like it's holding its breath? Yeah, that. I'd been dreaming for what felt like forever, and I started drifting into that weird in-between stage where you're technically still asleep, but your brain is already clocking the room. Like, you can feel the space around you even with your eyes closed. That happens to me sometimes, so normally I'd just roll over and forget it ever happened. But this time was different, because I felt this gentle pressure on my shoulders, like hands resting there. At first, I honestly assumed it was my aunt, Mira, because she sometimes checks on me if she hears me moving around, and she'll do that comforting little shoulder touch like, "Hey, you okay?" So my half-asleep mind tried to file it under normal. Except, it didn't make sense. The way it felt, the hands weren't coming from the side of the bed like a real person would. It was like they were behind me, but also kind of above me, like someone leaning over from an impossible angle. And my bed's shoved into a corner, so there's not even space for someone to stand in the right place to touch me like that, unless they were literally on top of me. And I would have felt that. The mattress would have dipped. The sheets would have shifted. Something. But there was nothing, just the pressure of those hands. Then the pressure moved. Slowly, like, this is the only way I can explain it. Like fingers sliding down my shoulders toward my collarbone, and then creeping, closer, toward my neck. And the second I realized where it was heading, this cold, instinctive panic hit me. Not just fear, more like my body knew something my brain hadn't fully caught up to yet. Like, no, don't let it do that. So I shifted my shoulders, and for this tiny moment, the pressure disappeared, like whatever it was backed off. Then it came back, faster, more urgent. I shifted again, still lying on my back because I didn't want to roll over and feel exposed. It sounds ridiculous saying it out loud, but in that moment, turning felt like making myself vulnerable in a way I couldn't explain. So I did this weird thing where I moved my arms up, kind of casually, like I was just adjusting in my sleep, except I was really positioning my hands near my neck. Not in an obvious, I'm guarding myself way, more like I was trying to trick whatever it was into thinking it didn't matter. And it worked. The pressure left. But the dread didn't. That stayed. My eyes were still closed because I was terrified that if I opened them, I'd confirm something I couldn't unsee. And I was groggy too. Like I didn't have the energy to sit up or turn on a light, even though part of me was screaming to do exactly that. But I wasn't dreaming. I know I wasn't. Because my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was shaking my whole chest. I grew up pretty religious, more than I am now, honestly. Lately, I've been kind of distant from it. But in that moment, I started praying like it was muscle memory, like my body reached for the only thing it knew how to grab. And then I noticed my limbs were getting numb. My arms first, and then, this detail is so weird, but I remember it clearly. My right big toe started tingling like it was falling asleep. I kept wiggling it under the blanket, over and over, just to reassure myself I still could. Like I was checking, I'm here, I'm still in control, I can still move. And then, the sound started. That's when I felt fully, completely terrified. Like not spooky story scared, more like that raw animal fear where your skin feels too tight. I kept praying, just over and over in my head. And after a while, the numbness started fading, like my circulation was coming back, or like the panic was easing just enough for my body to stop locking up. Eventually, I felt safe enough, barely, to shift again and turn slightly, even though it meant exposing my back. I don't even remember exactly when the clicking stopped. I think it must have, because at some point I fell asleep. But even when I woke up later, the thing I couldn't shake wasn't the sound. It was the memory of those hands. That slow slide from shoulder to neck, like something was testing how far it could go. I looked it up in the morning, because of course I did, and a lot of people talked about sleep paralysis. But the thing is, I could move. I did move. That's what throws me. I've had moments before where I wake from a dream with sudden dread, like my brain just dumps fear into my body and I snap awake. But this time, I wasn't snapping awake. I was already awake. I was in it. And I felt something touch me like it had weight, like it had intention. I still don't know what it was, whether it was my brain misfiring, some half-dream state, stress manifesting physically, or something else entirely. All I know is, it felt like it almost crossed a line, and that's what scares me the most. So, let me take you back about 15, 16 years. Back when I was still a teenager in Vietnam, still in high school, still thinking the world was mostly simple. Our town was small, the kind of place where everybody knows who your grandparents were and which hill your family's graves sit on. And then one day, everything changed because the government announced a new highway project. A big, straight road. Progress, they called it. But that straight line on the map went right through the back of my oldest Uncle Kwang's house, and straight across the little family graveyard on the hill behind it. They offered compensation, of course, money to relocate the graves to a new piece of land. On paper, that sounds practical, but if you've grown up with our traditions, you know it doesn't feel like moving. It feels like disturbing something sacred. Where I live now, here in Canada, when someone is buried, that's it. They rest there forever. Back home, it's different. When someone dies, they're buried first in a temporary grave, usually for a few years, so the body can return fully to the earth. Then the family reopens the grave, washes the bones carefully, and places them into a solid resting container before moving them to the family graveyard, the final place where everyone stays together. It's not just ritual, it's love, it's remembering, because the way we see it, a person doesn't really disappear when they die. They disappear when nobody speaks their name anymore, when nobody holds their memory. Like that idea in Coco, you know? That forgetting is the second death, so we don't forget. But here's where the tension comes in. There had already been some uncomfortable feelings between my mom, Lan, and my dad's side of the family. And when the compensation money came, it turned into an argument that wasn't really about money at all. My mom believed every single cent should go toward rebuilding the graveyard properly, because, in her words, that money is for the dead, not for the living. But my uncles wanted to keep some aside to build a memorial house, something that looked impressive, something people could point to. And I remember watching the adults talk in circles, their voices getting sharper, and thinking, please don't let this turn into something ugly, not over this. Then the relocation day came. Everyone gathered at Uncle Kwang's house, and we started digging in the late afternoon, only after the sun had dropped and the heat loosened its grip. The hill behind the house was darker than you'd expect, like the shadows up there were thicker. There were around half a dozen graves, and while the older generation stayed inside, drinking tea, playing cards, trying to act like this was normal. Us younger ones got sent up the hill with one job. Every 30 minutes, we had to light fresh incense at the graves, 3 sticks each time. Just walking up there over and over, the grass wet under our shoes, the air heavy, the sound of insects buzzing like a warning. It already felt wrong. But then the strange thing started happening. Every incense stick we lit burned down smoothly, at every grave, except one, my grandfather's. At his grave, there was always one stick that just wouldn't burn. It would smoke a little, then go stubbornly dark, like something had pinched it out. The first time, we blamed the dampness. Night dew, cheap incense, anything. The second time, we laughed nervously. The third time, nobody laughed. We ran down the hill and told my uncles. They came up, annoyed at first, like we were being dramatic. My second uncle, Hui, took the incense from us, frowning, like he was going to prove we were just kids imagining things. He lit 5 sticks instead of 3. And I swear to you, 4 of them burned perfectly, and 1 refused. Just 1, like it was making sure we understood. Everyone went quiet, the kind of quiet where even your breathing feels too loud. Because in our beliefs, that's not random. That's not weather. That's a warning. By the time we reached the part where we had to move the remains, it was almost 4 in the morning. A truck arrived, old, loud, its headlights cutting through the dark like knives. We had to move everything during a very specific, auspicious hour that a feng shui master had calculated. So we didn't have the luxury of stopping, even though the air felt wrong. We carried the containers one by one onto the truck. First, the eldest ancestors, then my grandfather, then my uncle's late wife. And here's a detail that always made my skin prickle. Uncle Kwang had been married twice. His first wife had died young. People whispered it was from a freak lightning strike while she was working outside during a sudden storm. Whether that story got exaggerated over the years, I don't know, but everyone believed it. When it was time for the final container, his second wife, 2 cousins showed up late, rushing, apologizing, acting like the clock didn't matter. They were assigned to carry her container to the truck. There was a straight, easy path from the back of the house to where the truck was parked. But for some reason, they didn't take it. They went the long way, looping behind the house, cutting around like they were avoiding something. I still see it like a photograph. I was standing on the back of the truck, bracing myself with one hand on the metal rail. The container came up toward me, and I reached out to steady it. And then, clack. Something dropped onto the truck bed. Not a tool, not gravel. A sound like dry pieces tapping wood. We shone our flashlights down, and there, scattered on the truck floor like someone had spilled them, were bones. My aunt's bones. The container had cracked at one bottom corner, and in that moment, every hair on my arms lifted, because all I could think was, that incense wasn't being dramatic. Grandpa was trying to stop us. Everything after that became chaos. We retraced the exact route my cousins had taken, scanning the ground with flashlights, calling out like we could somehow apologize loudly enough. We found more bones along the way, some in the grass, some near the back steps. We went back to the grave itself and searched beneath where the container had been sitting. Then someone ran to buy a new container. Faster, faster, because we still had to make the auspicious hour. We gathered every piece we could find and transferred the bones carefully, hands trembling, movements gentle like we were touching a sleeping baby. We made it, technically. We moved her remains into the new family graveyard on time. But it didn't feel finished. It felt incomplete. Not long after, my mom went to see a spirit medium. And look, I'm not here to tell you every medium is real or that you should believe everything you hear. I'm cautious about that too. The medium told my mom something chilling. The crack in that container wasn't new. It hadn't happened during the move. Later, when we looked at the broken pieces left behind, you could actually see it. Green moss along the edges of the crack, like water had been leaking through it for a long time. Then the medium, speaking as if it was my aunt, said water had damaged part of her remains, and that one small bone from a finger had completely broken down. But that wasn't the worst part. Through the medium's gestures, my aunt pointed to her spine and insisted a section of backbone was still missing. My mom called Uncle Hui immediately. He didn't believe her. He and my mom were still in conflict, still holding on to pride like it was armor. But that same night, something happened that made it hard for anyone to dismiss. My aunt's son-in-law, let's call him Min, was preparing to leave early the next morning for a work trip. Around 3 in the morning, he had the same dream 3 times in a row. In the dream, my aunt appeared and said, "You cannot go tomorrow. I'm dirty. I'm missing bones. Come back and help me find them." And that word, dirty, hit hard because it was true in the most practical way. We hadn't had time to do the full traditional washing of the bones with the special herb-boiled water. Everything had been rushed to meet that feng shui hour. Min woke up shaken and called Uncle Hui around 3:30 a.m., telling him everything. So the next day, we gathered again at Uncle Kwang's house. And this is the part I always pause on, because even now, I don't know how to explain it without sounding like I'm trying to convince you. My aunt's son said he'd also dreamed something strange. He saw a woman in a white dress sitting under a jackfruit tree behind the house, right along the route my cousins had taken. We all walked out there together, quiet, uneasy, like a group of people entering a room they didn't want to enter. We reached the jackfruit tree, and directly beneath it was a section of backbone. A human spine is unmistakable. The shape, the ridges, the weight of it, even when it's just bone. It was exactly what the medium had described. After that, nobody argued anymore. My uncles were terrified in the most honest way, like the fear stripped their egos clean. They used all the compensation money to rebuild the graveyard properly. No memorial house, no keeping anything aside, not $1. And me? I don't walk around thinking every coincidence is a sign. I don't live my life afraid. But I also can't tell myself that night was nothing. Because too many pieces fit together. Too many warnings, too many dreams, too exact. And it left me with this quiet belief I carry now, even across oceans. The people we love, they're still somewhere. Maybe not in the way we can measure, but in a way that shows up when we forget to be careful, when we rush, when we let pride get in the way of respect, watching over us, helping us, waiting for us to remember them so they don't truly disappear. Okay, so I have to tell you about last night, because it was genuinely one of the strangest experiences I've ever had, and I can't stop replaying it in my head. Lately, I've been deep into those Reddit stories, real-life creepy encounters, paranormal stuff, all of it. And I know, reading those before bed is basically asking for trouble. But I love that kind of thing. I'm one of those people who actually believes there's something out there. Even so, I'm not invincible. I still get scared. So it's around 10:10 p.m. when I finally plug my phone in, turn off the lights, and climb into bed. And immediately my brain starts doing that thing it always does, jumping between random thoughts and the scary stories I'd read. Normally, I can knock out pretty fast, but that night, no chance. I just had this heavy, uneasy feeling, like my room wasn't as familiar as it usually is. I pulled the blanket up over myself like I was trying to hide from my own imagination, but it got warm fast, like uncomfortably warm, and the air felt thick. I remember leaving this little gap near my face just so I could breathe easier, and that's when it started. At first, I thought maybe I was just restless, but no. My body started moving in a way that didn't feel like me choosing it, like my hands were doing these little motions on their own, and then it turned into full-on dance movements, while I'm literally lying in bed. And listen, this is the part that makes it extra weird. I'm a big fan of this dance group I've been obsessed with lately, and I know their choreography really well. My hands and arms started doing pieces of that choreo, like my body was practicing without permission. I didn't even want to move. I was tired. I just wanted to sleep. But it felt like something inside me had the steering wheel, and I was just watching. It lasted maybe 5 or 6 minutes, and when it stopped, I just froze. I pulled the blanket back up and tried to breathe normally, tried to calm myself down, told myself, okay, that was just a weird nervous thing. You're fine. But then, about half an hour later, it happened again. Only this time it wasn't just that one choreography. It was like my body was flipping through dance trends at random. Bits of moves I recognized from different songs, different challenges, like, why are you doing this right now? Kind of stuff. My fingers were twitching, my arms were moving in patterns, and I swear I was fighting to stay still. I felt exhausted, like my body was spending energy I didn't give it permission to spend. And then, on top of all that, I started hearing this sound, a soft whistle. Not loud, not dramatic, just faint, like it was somewhere in the room but not close enough to pinpoint. It happened for a few seconds, stopped, started again, like someone testing it, and then it just cut out completely. I remember staring into the dark after that, holding my breath, waiting for it to happen again. I stayed awake for almost 2 hours, just lying there with that tight feeling in my chest, trying to convince myself I was okay. Eventually, somehow, I fell asleep, but the whole night had this wrong feeling to it, like the air itself was off. And the creepiest part is, it didn't feel like I was imagining it. It didn't feel like I was half dreaming or hallucinating or doing that sleepy jerk thing people do. It felt real, like something was actually there, nudging me, pushing buttons, seeing what would happen. I don't know. Maybe there's a normal explanation. Maybe it was stress, or being overtired, or my brain reacting to all the scary stuff I'd been reading. But in the moment, it didn't feel like my mind messing with me. Hey, so I want to tell you something that's been sitting heavy on my chest for years now. I live in a senior Section 8 apartment complex, something like 160 units, give or take. It's one of those places where you get to know the rhythm of the building. The same elevators, the same voices in the hall, the same doors opening and closing. And like any senior community, people pass away sometimes. That's just part of life here. I'm a disabled guy in my mid-50s, Catholic, been here almost a decade. I'm not someone who goes looking for spooky explanations. If anything, I'm the type who wants things to make sense. I want a logical reason first. But this started about 4 years back, and it hasn't completely let go of me since. There used to be a neighbor down the hall. Her name was Marlene. Every single day, I'd see her sitting outside her apartment with her door shut, blasting music so loud you could hear it echoing down the hallway. One day I finally asked her, "Marlene, what's going on? Why the concert every day?" And she looks at me like it's the most normal thing in the world and says, "There's something in my apartment, a ghost, and it hates loud music, so I keep it on all the time." I laughed. I really did. I remember walking away thinking, poor woman, maybe she's just lonely. Maybe she's anxious. Then another neighbor, an older guy named Dennis who lived right next to her, told me he'd hear banging inside the wall between their apartments, like someone pounding from the inside, regularly. Within a year, both of them moved out. Just gone. And I swear to you, I thought that was the end of it. Until 3 days later. Because that's when I started hearing footsteps in my apartment. Not in the hallway, not upstairs. In my place, right there on the other side of the room, like someone walking from the kitchen area toward the bedroom. And I live alone. Always have. My door was locked. I'm on the top floor of a 6-story building, so it's not like someone's stomping around above me. At first I told myself it had to be plumbing, the building settling, maybe the heater, anything. But then little things started stacking up, like my touch lamp. Every once in a while I'd come out of the shower, towel on, door still closed, and that light would just click on by itself. No one else in there. No pets. Nothing. Sometimes the front door would slam shut when I knew I didn't leave a window open. And at night, this is the part that gets under my skin. I'd hear a noise in my bedroom, so close it felt like it was within arm's reach. I kept thinking, mouse. I'd lay there, trying to listen for scratching, for something explainable. Then came the dreams, or what I thought were dreams. I used to sleep with one pillow under my head and another sort of draped over the top of my face because I'm sensitive to light and sound. And on 3 different occasions, I woke up, half panicked with the feeling that something was pressing that pillow down on me, hard, like trying to smother me. I'd wrench myself around, heart hammering, and there'd be nothing. No one. Just me, gasping in the dark. Recently, I started having nightmares that felt even worse, like I'm being pulled, dragged by something I can't see. I'm fighting it, but my arms won't work. I can't scream. I can't breathe. And when I finally snap awake, I'm terrified. And the only thing I can do is start praying the Our Father over and over until my body settles down. And then there was this other thing that happened in bed that I can't shake. I called my brother. His name's Victor. And when he came over, he helped me strip the mattress down. We took the cover off, checked everything like we were hunting for evidence. No droppings, no nesting, no tears, no holes. Nothing living in there. It made no sense. And I need you to understand, I kept trying to talk myself out of it. I'd say, okay, maybe it's nerves. Maybe it's sleep paralysis. Maybe it's stress. I really tried. But there's one moment I can't explain away because I was fully awake. One night I'm in my bedroom and I see this thing, not like a person, not like a shadow. It was like a yellow, translucent shape, almost like a glowing square, kind of shimmering, sparkling in a weird way. And it moved. Not walking like a human, but gliding, steady, right into my bedroom space. It was about chest high off the floor. It came in like it belonged there. And I just snapped. I yelled, like a gut-level instinctive yell. Get out! A couple seconds later, it was gone. After that, I doubled down on what I know. I pray the rosary every day. I wear a brown scapular all the time. Not as some magic charm, more like grounding. Like holding onto a rope when the water's rough. I even had a priest come to bless the apartment and bless me with holy water. I went through the sacraments, confession, communion, even anointing of the sick. I was trying to cover every base, spiritually and practically. But here's the part that hurts to say. After that, he wouldn't come back. Not for confession at my place, not to bring communion. It felt like he was avoiding it. Like maybe he didn't want to deal with it, or maybe he thought it would feed into fear. I don't know. I just know I felt kind of left alone with it. And the strangest thing is, it's not constant. It's not every day. It's not even every month. It happens a few times a year, just enough to make me question myself, and just enough to make me dread the next time it shows up. So that's my story. That's what I've been carrying. And I'm telling you the truth when I say, I don't know what it is. I don't know what's causing it. I only know what I've heard, what I've felt, what I've seen, and how hard I've tried to explain it away before I ever called it something I couldn't name. So, last winter, I was packing up to spend the holidays at my parents' place, and I was actually excited in that quiet, adult way, because my sister Mara and I are both in our 30s now, and we don't get those easy, casual hangouts like we used to. Life just spreads people out. A few days before we were supposed to meet up, Mara calls me and says, "Okay, don't laugh, but something weird has been going on." And I'm already smiling because that's how she is. She'll say she's not superstitious, and then immediately tell you about something that absolutely sounds like a ghost story. She tells me it started after she bought this antique lamp. Not like a cute, normal thrift store lamp either. She found it at this little secondhand shop tucked between a laundromat and a bakery. One of those places that smells like old books and dust and someone's perfume from another decade. And she said the second she saw it, she just had to have it. Like it reached out and grabbed her attention. It was pricey for a lamp, but the shop owner told her it was from around the mid-century era, like 1950s-ish, and collector-worthy. The part that stuck with me was this. The cord was damaged. Not frayed, not worn, missing. Like someone had ripped a chunk of it clean off. Mara brought it home anyway. And then the weirdness started. The first story she told me, this one felt small, but it got under my skin. She said one night she'd finally gotten her apartment calm and clean. Her son, he was about 4 at the time, had gone down, and she'd done the whole routine. Toys picked up, lights dim, the "please let the night be easy" kind of quiet that parents know. She's on the phone with her best friend, standing in the hallway, and their cat, this lazy, clingy cat named Juniper, is lounging on the bed nearby. And suddenly Juniper bolts upright and stares hard at the doorway like something just walked past. Mara's like, "What is your problem?" Because Juniper usually scratches at the door if she wants out. But instead, the cat just watches. Mara opens the door, and right there on the floor is one of her kids' toys. One of those little plastic figures that absolutely does not roll or slide easily. Like it had been placed there. She checks the bedroom. Her kid is asleep. Out cold. No sleepwalking. No sneaky little footsteps. And she swears she didn't leave the toy there. Then she tells me about the music box. This is the one that made her voice go tight, like she hated even saying it out loud. She said she was home alone one afternoon, and the kid's music box, something that normally had to be wound up, just started playing. Soft and tinny, that creepy, sweet lullaby sound. She didn't even go to it right away. She just stood there, frozen, listening, trying to convince herself there had to be some explanation. And then she grabbed her phone and recorded it because she was so freaked out she needed proof that she wasn't imagining it. When she showed me the video later, I could hear it. She's trying to sound calm, but her voice has that shaky edge people get when they're holding back tears. And she said it didn't happen once. It happened multiple times. So then the holidays come, and we're both at my parents' house, back in our childhood orbit, the same creaky stairs, the same familiar smell of coffee and pine and laundry detergent. One night, after everyone's gone to bed, Mara and I do what we always used to do. We stay up too late. We're downstairs, lights low. The game is doing its thing. Whispers, shadows, that slow building panic. And Mara starts talking about the lamp again. She's half laughing, half serious, and she goes, "I know how it sounds, but I think it's..." like a kid. I think something's attached to it, like a child. And I'm about to make some sarcastic comment, because that's my default, honestly, when the neighbor's dog starts barking. Not normal barking, like violent, angry barking. The kind of barking that says, something is here. And it's around 1 a.m. on this dead quiet road, so it's immediately unsettling. And then I feel it. I don't even know how to describe it without sounding ridiculous, but it felt like a faint gust of air moved past me, like someone brushed by my shoulder, except there was no one there. And seconds later, from the corner of the room, a toy starts playing. This little musical toy my mom kept in a toy box for when the grandkids visited. It wasn't sitting on top. It wasn't balanced on the edge. It was buried under other stuff at the bottom of the chest. Nothing bumped it. Nobody touched it. It just started. That bright, cheerful little tune spilling into the room like it belonged there, like it was normal, like the game wasn't already making our nerves raw. I remember pausing and doing this quick scan of the basement, like my brain was desperately searching for a person to blame it on. Like maybe my dad was messing with us. Maybe my mom was upstairs with some remote-controlled prank device. Anything. But the room was empty. Mara's face crumples instantly. She starts crying, quiet at first, then full on. And she just says, "See? I told you. I told you." And here's the part I'm not proud of. I didn't wrap my arms around her. I didn't say, "That must feel terrifying." I didn't sit with her in it. I did the opposite. I did what skeptics do when they're scared. I acted like nothing happened. I went, "It's fine. We're just on edge because of the game." And I kept playing like if I didn't acknowledge it, it couldn't be real. Eventually I convinced her to go to bed, and we turned everything off, and the house went quiet again. But it was a different kind of quiet after that. The kind where you're listening. Looking back now, I wish I'd been gentler. I wish I'd treated her fear like something worthy of care instead of something to talk her out of. Because here's the truth. The rational part of me still wants to roll its eyes. The lamp, the kids' toys, the music boxes. It sounds like a story that knows how to be spooky. But that night, the dog, the cold little rush of air, that toy starting up from the bottom of the chest, that part wasn't secondhand. That part happened to me too. Mara got rid of the lamp not long after that. Donated it, tossed it, I'm not even sure. She just wanted it gone. And as far as I know, the strange stuff stopped after that. We barely talk about it now. Like we both put it in a mental box labeled "Nope" and shoved it onto a high shelf. But lately I've been thinking, maybe we should talk about it. Not because I suddenly believe in hauntings, but because I think my need to be the practical one sometimes blocks me from really meeting people where they are. And I don't know. I'm still a skeptic. I probably always will be. But I also can't fully shake the feeling that something heard us talking that night and decided to answer. So, my boyfriend and I have gotten into ghost hunting. We're still pretty new to it, but I've taken it seriously. Like, I read up on protections, I'm respectful, I leave little offerings when we go to cemeteries, and we always say goodbye. Always. I set boundaries out loud too, like, don't follow us home, don't mess with us, don't scare us, that kind of thing. And honestly, I don't feel like whatever this was meant harm. But I also know my old belief system can make me second-guess everything, so I've been sitting here wanting some kind of, I don't know, confirmation? Reassurance? Just something that says, yes, this can happen, or no, you're not losing it. Last weekend we went to a small cemetery outside town. We were there maybe 2-ish hours. It actually went really well, like wild EMF spikes, the kind where you look at each other like, okay, that's not nothing. We left feeling excited, not freaked out. After that, we drove back to my mom's place. We parked and we just sat in the car for a while, decompressing, talking, listening to music, kind of laughing about the night. We shared a couple little swigs of whiskey, nothing crazy. I wasn't drunk. I wish I could tell myself I was. It would be so convenient. But I wasn't messed up, and neither was he. It's late, around 12:45, maybe closer to 1 a.m., and we finally decide to go inside. My mom's house is in this tiny young town, and there's this dead-end side street, more like an alley, that meets the main highway at a curve. There's a streetlight right where that alley opens to the road. No buses, no public transportation, no people wandering around, and we don't really have a homeless population here. It's quiet. We get out of the car. I step out from the driver's side and walk around the back to meet my boyfriend on the passenger side. And the second my feet hit the ground, I see him. A man. Right under the streetlight, near the mouth of that alley. And I swear to you, he wasn't just a guy in dark clothes. He looked like a solid black shape, like someone had cut the outline of a person out of night itself and placed it there. No face, no features, no eyes, nothing reflective, just black, dense, real. He looked like he had on a hooded cloak, but it didn't drag on the ground, more like it fell to somewhere around his calves. And he was standing so still, facing us, like he'd been waiting for us to notice him. As I'm walking, I start whispering, "Babe, look, look." But my voice barely comes out. It's like my throat forgot how to work. And this is the part that makes me feel crazy even saying it out loud. In my head, I kept thinking, hey, like I was trying to get his attention without speaking. And it felt like something answered back, not with words, not like a voice, but like that same, hey, coming right back at me. Like a quiet back and forth in my mind for a few seconds. Not scary exactly, just heavy, ominous. Like being watched by something that's calm but powerful. Meanwhile, my boyfriend isn't reacting to what I'm seeing at all. Like, he's not even looking that direction. But then he tenses up and goes, "Did you hear that?" And I'm like, "Hear what?" He said he heard footsteps, clear as day, walking fast on the pavement. I heard nothing. Not one step. Not a crunch of gravel. Nothing. But my boyfriend is suddenly alert, like real-world alert, and he says, "Get the gun." That snapped me back into my body, you know? Like, oh, we might be in danger. Because from his perspective, there's someone close by in a dead-end alley at 1 a.m. So I reach into the glove box, grab his gun, and the moment I turn back around, the man is across the street. He's standing near a road sign, like he's waiting at a bus stop, which is ridiculous because there is no bus stop. And he's not even on the sidewalk. He's in the grass, like someone's literal front yard, staring at us. And it wasn't like he walked over there while I wasn't paying attention. It was instant. The shift was so fast my brain didn't know where to file it. Here's the thing that messes with me the most. I saw him in the alley first. I know I did. My boyfriend says he never saw anything in the alley at all, not even a shadow, not even movement. He only saw him across the street by the sign. But at the exact moment I'm seeing this cloaked black figure under the streetlight, my boyfriend is hearing footsteps coming from that direction. So it's like we were both getting the same encounter, but through different senses, different angles. I don't know how else to explain it. We go inside, and of course, when we look back out, he's gone. Just completely gone. I checked windows, like every single one, because I needed to see where he went. There was nowhere he could have disappeared to that quickly without us seeing him walk off. And the whole time, I'm not shaking or panicking. I'm just aware. Like my body understood something before my brain did. It was very pay attention, very this matters. If I had to guess height, he wasn't freakishly tall. Maybe around 5'10" or so. Built like an older man. Strong presence. The kind of presence that makes you feel small without doing anything at all. I keep wondering if it was connected to the cemetery, like some kind of guardian energy, or a spirit that followed just far enough to make itself known. Or maybe it wasn't from there at all. My mom's house used to belong to a man named Gerald, an old pharmacist who passed away years ago. And the neighbors talk about their father, an attorney named Thomas, who died not that long back. So there's history here. There are names. There are people who've lived and died around this area. And I'm not trying to turn this into a dramatic shadow man story or whatever. I'm honestly telling you because I don't have anyone to talk to about it who won't either laugh or immediately jump to demon. I just want someone to tell me what they think. Because two people saw the same thing, just not the same way. And I can't stop seeing that solid black figure under the streetlight, staring at us like he'd been there the whole time, waiting for the exact second we stepped out of the car. You know how Christmas used to be? Not just lights and cookies and the same old movies, but that little tradition people forget now, where you'd sit around and tell ghost stories like it was part of the season. Well, the other night my sister Lena and I were doing exactly that. Just talking, laughing, trying to one-up each other with creepy stories. And suddenly, I got hit with this memory so sharp it felt like someone tapped me on the shoulder. So, my grandparents were those kinds of people who collected strays, in the best way. They were generous and social, and somehow their house became a sort of unofficial home base for anyone in the neighborhood who didn't have much family. There were always aunts and uncles who weren't really related, cousins who didn't share a drop of blood with us, just people who'd found their way into my grandparents' orbit and stayed there. And as a kid, I loved it, because it meant you were constantly meeting characters. Some were a little rough around the edges, folks who'd made some mistakes or life had knocked them around, but most of them were good at the core, just complicated. And honestly, it made family gatherings feel like this colorful, unpredictable little world. That's how I met Marcy. I was maybe 7, 8, somewhere in there. Marcy had been around my grandparents forever. Some kind of connection through an old neighbor. The details are fuzzy now. She'd show up for holidays sometimes, especially the ones where everyone was meant to be together. Her parents had died young, and I remember hearing that she'd had a hard marriage at one point. The kind you don't talk about much in front of kids, but you feel the shadow of it anyway. What I remember clearly is this. Marcy was different. She'd been a police officer in Chicago back in the 70s, or maybe early 80s. Either way, it was a time when that wasn't exactly common, and she carried herself like someone who'd had to prove she'd been impelled. Not in a loud way, in a steady way, like her spine had been made of something stronger than bone. And the thing was, she didn't come to parties and sit quietly with the adults. Not Marcy. She played with us. Like really played. She'd get down on the floor with the kids, jump into whatever game was happening, and somehow she'd still carry this "don't mess with me" energy, even while she was laughing. I still remember her beating a bunch of us at horse in the driveway, like it wasn't even hard. This older woman in her boots, sinking shots while we stood there shocked, like we'd just seen a magician. But beneath the fun, she had this other side. Protector isn't even a strong enough word. It was like she was always scanning the room, always ready. She didn't tolerate bullying, didn't tolerate cruelty, didn't tolerate people pushing others around. One time, years later, my mom was hosting some kind of community event, and there was this guy in town who'd been running his mouth, saying he was going to cause trouble. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make everyone uneasy. And Marcy heard about it and basically said, "All right." She showed up early and stood near the entrance like she was on duty. Not aggressive, just present, like a living warning sign. My sister and I adored her. When my parents were busy, Marcy would sometimes drive out from the city and take us places. Nothing fancy. A diner, a little roadside park, a movie theater that smelled like popcorn and old carpet. But to us, it felt like being chosen, like being looked after by someone who took that job personally. And then, you know how it goes. You get older. You stop going to family events. You act like you're too cool for the people who loved you when you were small. Without even noticing, you drift. She went fast, and I still feel this sour little shame when I remember the night of her funeral. I was a teenage boy, and in my head the world was simple. Friends first, everything else later. I told my dad I wanted to skip it and go out instead. He didn't yell. He just looked at me and said, "No, you're coming." And thank God he did. Now here's where it turns. Fast forward more than a decade. I'm in law school, second year, and I'm running on caffeine, stress, and whatever scraps of sleep I can steal. One night, after this brutal study session, I finally pass out. And I have this dream. I'm a kid again, small, light. That weird feeling in dreams where your body is younger than your mind. I'm sitting on the living room floor at my parents' house, and everything looks exactly like it did back then. Same furniture, same lamp, even the faint, cozy glow you only get from Christmas lights in a dark room. My grandmother is there, and my great-aunt too. They're sitting like they're waiting for something, calm as can be. No fear, no tension, just stillness. Then the room shifts, like the camera in my head slowly turns, and on the other side of the room is Marcy. I hadn't thought about her in years. Not really. Not in any deep way. But there she was, clear as day. Solid. Real. She looked at me, stared at me, and said just one thing. "I have to go now." That's it. No explanation, no smile, no drama. Just that, like a statement of fact. And I woke up instantly. I mean instantly, like I'd been yanked out of sleep. And I was drenched. I'm not exaggerating. My shirt, the sheets, sweat everywhere, like I'd run a mile. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. And I didn't fall back asleep. Not even close. I've turned it over in my head 1,000 times since then. I don't know what that was. I don't know if it meant anything, or if stress and memory and grief just combined into something my brain needed to show me. But I'll tell you this, the feeling I woke up with wasn't random. It was certainty. Like she'd been there for a reason. Like she'd been watching the way she always did. Quiet, ready, protective. And whatever it was, whatever she'd been holding back, keeping away, guarding me from, it was done. Her work was finished. And she had to go. So, this is one of those stories where, even when I'm telling it, I'm half laughing like, there's no way this is real. And the other half of me is getting chills just remembering it. It started when I was little, like little. My mom took me to a wedding in my hometown, and it was held at this old place everyone in the area whispered about. Not spooky vibes haunted, known haunted. I swear people said a bunch of folks had died there years back, but the number always changes depending on who's telling it, so I don't even want to pretend I know the truth. What I do know is, the air in that house felt heavy, like it had been holding its breath for 100 years. Anyway, at some point I wanted to change my dress, because I was a kid and I spilled something on it, obviously, so my mom brought me upstairs to one of the bedrooms to help me. We're standing there, just the two of us, and out of nowhere, something on the shelf next to us just launches off. Not slides, not tips. It flew like it was swatted. My mom immediately snapped at me, like, "You need to be more careful." And I'm sitting there wide-eyed, like, "Mom, I didn't even touch it." I remember being so upset because she thought I was lying. Years later, when she learned more about that house's reputation, she admitted she believes me now. And honestly, that was just the opening scene. Not long after that, in the house we lived in when I was growing up, I started hearing kids in my room. Like, children playing, laughing, the whole thing. It wasn't faint either. Sometimes it sounded like there were a handful of them right there on the other side of my walls. Like my room was attached to a playground I couldn't see. One night still sticks with me more than anything. I woke up and I could hear this old-timey music, like a record player spinning, and I heard kids giggling. And then, this is the part that makes my stomach flip. Even through the sleep fog, I felt this sudden shift, like they realized I was awake. The laughing stopped and I heard shh noises, like they were trying to be quiet because they'd been caught. When we moved out, my parents told me something they'd never mentioned before. Before I was born, they had a roommate. His name was Marcus, I think. And he woke up one night and saw 2 children at the foot of his bed, shaking it like they were trying to wake him up. So yeah, that was my childhood. Just casual ghost children. Fast forward, I'm 26 now, and I live in a totally different state. And I remember thinking when I moved, okay, new place, fresh energy, no creepy history. I'm grown. I'll be fine. And for a minute, I was fine. Then weird stuff started again. The house we moved into still had a landline set up from the previous owner. We hadn't even really used it, but it was connected. And it started calling itself. I know how insane that sounds, but I'd see it ringing. I'd pick it up, and it would just be static, like someone was on the line but not quite there. It happened enough that I stopped brushing it off as a glitch. And then there was the radio. Not every night, but often enough to feel targeted. At exactly 4:44 a.m., the radio would click on by itself, like it was timed, like somebody wanted me awake. On top of that, I'd hear what sounded like a grown man coughing downstairs, heavy footsteps, slow pacing up and down the stairs. And the worst part was, it always seemed to happen when I was home alone. I tried to rationalize it, old house noises, pipes, neighbors, but it had a rhythm to it, a presence. And for a while, I honestly wondered if it was my granddad. A few years later, we moved again, into the house I live in now. And this is where it got darker, more personal. Almost immediately, I started having sleep paralysis. Every night. The kind where you wake up, but your body doesn't belong to you yet. You can't move, you can't speak, and your brain is screaming while you're trapped. And every time, it felt like something was hunting me. I'd open my eyes and there would be this tall figure at the end of the bed, just blacker than black. Like it wasn't a shadow, it was something wearing the shape of one. I could hear footsteps. I could hear scratching, like nails on the walls, and it would take everything in me to force myself awake. Like I had to claw my way back into my own body. Even when I'm fully awake, I still get that feeling like something slips past the edge of my vision. You know when you see movement in your peripheral and you whip your head around and there's nothing there? That. Over and over. And I'm not alone in noticing it. My animals have done it too, stopping dead, staring into the same corner I've felt weird about, like they're tracking something I can't see. My husband, his name's Ryan, actually lived in this house before I moved in. He told me that one day he had an Instant Pot sitting on a closet shelf, totally stable, and it just fell, like it got yanked forward. And the closet it fell from is right near the area where I swear I hear things and catch that peripheral movement. Then, a couple weeks ago, my daughter's toy fell off her shelf in her room. No one touched it. No bump. No shaking shelf. It just tipped like it was nudged. And a few times, I've heard voices. Not like, maybe it was the TV voices. Clear enough that I froze and held my breath. A tiny kid's voice saying, "Help me." And once, "Hey," like it was trying to get my attention. Then, because apparently I don't learn, I went to an antique store. I saw this gorgeous vintage mirror, all ornate, totally my style. I was obsessed with it the second I saw it. But for whatever reason, I didn't buy it that day. I went home and told myself I was being practical. That night, I dreamed about the mirror. Not like a normal dream where something just appears. I mean, it felt like it was calling me. Like it wanted me to come get it. So the next day, I did. I went back and bought it. And ever since then, I've had these dreams where there's a woman trapped inside it. Like she's stuck behind glass, pounding without sound. And I've had this recurring nightmare that my house catches on fire. And then, the real-life stuff started lining up in this way that made my skin crawl. The mirror sits across from the TV in my sunroom. Since the mirror came home, the TV will turn on by itself sometimes. Just powers on, like someone hit the remote. And one time, it turned on and started playing Jeepers Creepers, randomly. Like, not even something we'd watched recently. Just popped on like the house picked a joke at my expense. Now here's the part that makes me feel sick as a mom. My daughter has started waking up scared. She'll sit up in bed and point at her closet and say, "Mommy, I'm scared." And her closet shares a wall with the closet where the Instant Pot fell. Also, she's sleeping in the same room where my sleep paralysis was the worst. Sometimes she wakes up and just talks, like full, sleepy little conversations. And I'll stand there in the doorway listening, trying to decide if she's dreaming, or talking to herself, or talking to someone I can't see. But I've started questioning things I never used to. Like, am I sensitive to something? Is something attached to me? Is it just a freak coincidence that I end up in houses where weird things happen? Or am I just exhausted and scaring myself and slowly losing it? And I know how it sounds, trust me, I do. I'll be the first person to make a joke like, maybe I'm just crazy, because it feels safer than admitting how genuinely unsettled I am. But when you've lived through it, when you've heard the laughter, the shushing, the footsteps, the voices, the TV turning on by itself, and now you're watching your kid point into a closet like there's something in there. I don't know. What would you think if it was you? I don't even know how to say this without sounding a little out there. But for the last few years, I've felt like I've been visited by ghosts. Not the scary kind. The soft kind. The kind that used to curl up on your pillow and headbutt your hand until you finally paid attention. I've had cats my whole life. When I was little, I got my first cat, her name was Luna, back when I was in kindergarten. A couple years later, we brought home Pip, and those two became this inseparable duo. But Luna was mine. You know? She'd follow me from room to room like she had an assignment. She slept pressed against my side. If I was crying, she showed up. If I was sick, she posted up like a little guard. She died when I was 20. It happened fast, and it happened when my family was out of town, and it just wrecked me. I remember thinking, that's it? Like a whole life and all that love, and then suddenly she's just gone? Around that same time, totally unrelated, at least I think, it's when I started having night terrors. The kind where you wake up drenched in sweat and you're yelling before you even realize you're awake. I was living with roommates then, and I felt horrible because I'd scare the life out of them. And the dreams were always the same theme. Someone I loved dying. over and over for weeks at a time. But here's the part I can't explain. After a handful of those nightmares, Luna would show up in them. Not in a spooky way, not like some horror movie. She'd just appear, quiet, calm, sitting there like she owned the place. She'd look up at me and do that slow blink cats do, like, "I trust you. You're safe." And in my dream, it was like she was speaking without words, telling me, "It's okay. Breathe. I'm here." And every single time she showed up, the night terrors stopped afterward. Like the cycle broke. I'd wake up shaken but also peaceful. Like something warm had settled over me and I could finally rest. So I tried to write it off. Grief does weird things. Brains do weird things. Fine. Then, a year or so later, I got into a car accident that I genuinely don't understand how I walked away from. I was on this back stretch of highway, barely any cars, cold enough that your lungs burn. My tire blew and I spun across lanes like a toy someone flicked. I clipped a truck, at least I think I did, then slammed into the median where the snow had piled up like a wall. Airbags exploded, glass everywhere. The front of my car looked mangled. I sat there for a second waiting to feel pain, because it felt impossible that I wasn't hurt. But I wasn't. Not really. Just whiplash so bad it made me nauseous. I remember putting my forehead on the steering wheel and trying to slow my breathing because my whole body was vibrating with adrenaline. And then, knock knock, a tap on my driver's side window. I looked up and there was this guy standing there, probably late 30s or early 40s, dressed like it was a mild day out. Hoodie unzipped, work boots, no gloves, like he hadn't noticed the temperature. His face was kind, though, calm, like he'd done this before, like he knew exactly how to keep his voice steady when someone else was falling apart. He talked to me through the cracked open window until help arrived. Just kept me grounded, asked me my name, asked me if I could move my fingers, told me to keep breathing. And when the state trooper's lights finally showed up in the distance, the guy sort of stepped back like his job was done, and he said, "Milo." And I swear to you, my stomach dropped, because that had been my childhood cat's name. Not Luna, another one from later, a sweet, goofy orange boy who used to sleep on my clean laundry like it was his calling. The guy told me he was driving some kind of rental truck for work, and I didn't see it anywhere. I asked where he lived, some small town nearby, and afterward, when I finally calmed down, I tried to find him. I searched public records. I called a few rental places. Nothing. No trace. Like he'd stepped out of thin air just long enough to keep me alive, and then disappeared. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe my brain latched onto a familiar name because I was in shock. Maybe it's that third man thing people talk about, someone showing up in disasters to guide you through it. Or maybe it was the same thing as my dreams. Me, terrified. And then this quiet, steady presence arriving like, "Okay, I'm here. You're not alone." I don't know. I don't know what to do with it, so I just carried it around. And then life moved on, like it does. I'm 27 now. I have a job, a grown-up routine, bills, the whole thing. And I have 2 cats, Saffron and Biscuit, my boys, my little family. I can't have kids, so yeah, this is it for me. They're my heart walking around on 4 paws. And this week, Biscuit died. It was sudden. One minute he was fine, and the next he wasn't. Some kind of heart condition, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the vet said, like the words could make it feel less brutal. He collapsed at home, and I held him, and there was nothing I could do. It happened so fast I didn't even get the chance to bargain with the universe. He just slipped away in my arms. I've been completely wrecked, like someone scooped my insides out. But the weirdest part is, he doesn't feel fully gone. I'll feel the bed dip the way it used to when he jumped up to settle near my knees. The treat jar, this heavy thing I never knock over, tipped off the counter the other night and landed right beside his bowl, the one I still can't bring myself to put away. I'll hear those tiny little floor creaks like someone's trotting down the hallway, even when Saffron is literally sitting on my lap. And then there's the purring. Saffron barely purrs. Biscuit purred like a little engine, loud and constant, like he was always reassuring me with it. And now, when the house gets too quiet, especially when I wake up, sometimes I hear it. Not in a "did the fridge just turn on" way, in a purr way, warm and rhythmic and unmistakably familiar. And I just lay there thinking, am I losing it? Is this grief? Is my brain trying to stitch the world back together by inventing him? Or is it him? I've never been a paranormal person. I've always wanted proof and logic and something I can point at. But I can't deny what it feels like. That when I'm scared, when I'm cracked open, something gentle keeps showing up anyway. So if you're listening to me and thinking, yeah, okay, I get it. I hear myself too. But still, if that man on the highway, Milo, from that little town I can't track down, if you're out there somewhere and you're a real person, thank you. I've wanted to say that for years. And if you weren't real, if you were something else entirely, then I guess thank you for that too. Because I don't know what this is, but it feels like love that refuses to leave. So, I've been to this place called Pine Hollow in Maryland a bunch of times. It's one of those abandoned spots that feels eerie, mostly because you expect it to. Peeling paint, busted windows, that kind of thing. And for years, honestly, nothing ever happened. It was just a creepy building with a creepy reputation. But last spring, late April I think, it was different. I was back there with my girlfriend Mara and our friend Jess, and we ended up in one of the rear buildings. There's this long hallway, and on both sides are these small rooms, like old holding cells or padded rooms, or something that used to be used for people who were not okay. The air felt stale, like it had been trapped in there for decades. I remember walking all the way down to the end of the hall, and I'm the kind of person who checks everything, partly curiosity, partly safety. So I'd been peeking into the rooms as I passed, making sure nobody was squatting inside. Every room I checked was empty. No sleeping bags, no trash piles, nothing. When I reached the end, I turned around to head back, and halfway down the hallway, from one of the doorways, something leaned out, not like a person stepping into view, more like a shape, a shadow that didn't match the lighting, just a quick, quiet peek, like it was shy or cautious. And the weirdest part is, it didn't feel angry. It didn't feel like a get out warning. It felt sad. I'm getting chills even saying that because that's the part that sticks to me. The feeling. Like whatever I saw carried this heavy, aching loneliness. And in the moment, I didn't think ghost or demon or any of that. I just had this flash of a thought. That's a kid. I can't explain why. I just knew that's what it felt like. And I don't care how tough anyone thinks they are. My body reacted before my brain did. I made this stupid noise, like a half yelp, half gasp. Mara and Jess both jumped and were like, "What? What did you see?" And I wouldn't even answer. I just rushed them down the hall and out into daylight like the building was on fire. Only once we were outside did I tell them. And of course, they wanted to go back in. I didn't want to. I really didn't. But I didn't want to look like I was totally losing it, so I reluctantly agreed. We walked back up to the entrance, and right as we were about to step inside, we heard footsteps coming from deeper in the building. And that was it. I was done. I remember saying something like, "Nope, absolutely not," and we left. Now, I've had weird little things happen at home before, little unexplained stuff, nothing that really stopped me cold. But after that hallway, it's like something followed the idea of me home. Or maybe it just woke me up to noticing things I'd brushed off before. The first thing was the voices. It's only happened a couple times, but it's so clear it messes with your head afterward. One afternoon, I walked in through the front door and I heard two adults, one male, one female, talking to each other. Not yelling, not whispering, just normal conversation, like you'd hear from another room when someone's visiting. And then the second I realized, wait, who is that? It was gone, like a radio turning off mid-sentence. I checked the entire house, rooms, closets, the back door, everything. Nothing. Then, on a totally different day, Mara had her own version. She was downstairs changing and she heard a man speaking upstairs. She assumed it was my stepdad. Later, when I got home, she asked casually where he'd gone, and I told her he'd been at work the whole time. No one had come in. No one had left. She swore she never heard footsteps, never heard a door open. Just a voice. Upstairs. Like somebody was there. This one I'm torn on because I didn't see it. Only Mara did, and she'd just woken up. She told me she rolled over in bed one morning and, for a split second, there was a small figure in the doorway, child-sized, and then it was gone. I tried to be rational about it. I've had those half-awake moments too, where your brain is still dreaming while your eyes are open. So I told myself that's what it was. I wanted that to be what it was. But then the third experience happened, one we both heard, and it's the one that made me stop trying to explain everything away. It was late, really late. Mara and I were downstairs on the couch, watching TV like we always do. Above us is my stepdad's bedroom. He had work early, so we knew he was asleep. We started hearing movement upstairs. At first, I ignored it. Old house, settling, whatever. But it kept happening. So I paused the TV and we just listened. And it wasn't house noises. It sounded like something heavy shifting, like furniture scraping or being dragged a few inches. Then lighter footsteps, quick ones, moving from the hallway toward my brother's room. But my brother wasn't even home. And my stepdad, there's no way. He was dead asleep, and he's not exactly the type to get up at 2 a.m. and rearrange furniture. I didn't ask him about it. I didn't want to sound insane, but I know what I heard. We both did. And the reason I'm even talking about this now is because it feels like it's escalating, like it's getting bolder or maybe just louder. A couple weeks ago, I left for work around 3:30 in the morning. Mara was still asleep. About an hour after I left, she woke up to a whole chain of sounds, like it was putting on a performance. She told me she heard something walking down the stairs, then things on a shelf shifting, like someone touching objects and moving them around. Then noise from the basement, like a person rummaging through clothes, like someone changing or pulling fabric off hangers. And then, the bang. She said it was so loud and so sudden it made her sit straight up in bed. A violent hit on the wall right next to the bed, like someone sprinted through the doorway and slammed full force into the wall beside her. That's what shook me the most. Because the other stuff? Weird, unsettling, sure. But that bang felt aggressive. Not curious, not sad, not accidental. And what messes with us is we've noticed something. The more we talk about it, the more it happens. Like it wants attention. Like acknowledging it flips a switch. So we've been trying to ignore it. Keep the lights normal. Keep the TV on. Act like everything is fine. But in the back of my mind, I keep circling the same questions. What is it? Is it safe? Is it one thing? Or multiple? Because how do you hear adult voices, male and female, then maybe see a child-sized figure, then feel this heavy sadness in an abandoned hallway, and then get hit with something that feels downright hostile? I don't know. I just know I'm tired of guessing, and I hate that part of me is still stuck back in that hallway at Pine Hollow, watching something peek around a doorway like it's afraid to be seen, and feeling my throat tighten like I'm grieving for something I can't even name. So this happened to me about 15 years ago, and I still think about it more often than I'd like to admit. I was walking home late after a casual night out. Nothing wild, just a few drinks and laughs with friends at a little pub. Around midnight, we did what we always used to do. We stopped at our usual corner for one last chat, maybe 10 minutes or so, then hugged it out and split up in different directions. Where I lived back then was packed with apartment buildings, tight streets, lots of little balconies, and the whole neighborhood was basically hills stacked on hills. Normally, I take the main uphill that led straight to my place, but that night I chose the parallel street instead, the one closer to where we'd been hanging out. It felt like a shortcut. Same climb, just a different lane up the hill. The moment I started heading uphill, everything went quiet. Not in a peaceful way, more like someone turned the volume down on the whole world. And then I heard it. This steady, old-fashioned ticking, like a grandfather clock. Not a modern little click-click, but a full, roomy tick-tock, tick-tock, like it had weight to it. And the weirdest part was that it didn't seem to come from one place. It was like the sound was everywhere at once, sort of wrapped around me. At first, I told myself something simple. Okay, someone's got their balcony door open, and they own the loudest clock on Earth. I even half smiled at the thought and kept walking. But after a few steps, I realized something didn't add up. The ticking stayed exactly the same volume. Not louder, not softer. Not drifting behind me, not pulling ahead. Just constant. Like the sound was keeping pace with my body. That's when I started actually looking. I glanced at the balconies closest to the street, expecting to spot an open door, a lit room, anything that would explain it. But the whole block looked shut down. Curtains drawn, lights off, doors closed. It was a cold night, the kind where nobody leaves anything open for long. And there wasn't a person in sight. Still, I wasn't scared, not yet. More confused than anything. I slowed down a little, listening harder, trying to triangulate it the way you do when you hear a siren or music in the distance. I even paused once, just to see if it would fade when I stopped. Nope. Same exact ticking, same exact distance, like it was hovering right beside me. I walked slower, then a bit faster. I turned my head left and right. The sound didn't change. It didn't echo the way I'd expect between buildings either. It was just steady and close, like somebody was walking next to me with a clock tucked under their coat. A couple minutes passed like that, me climbing, listening, trying to make sense of it, until I reached the top of the hill. And the second my foot hit the flatter part at the top, the ticking stopped. Not gradually, not fading out, just gone, like someone flipped a switch. I remember standing there for a moment, staring down the hill I'd just climbed, waiting for it to start again. Waiting for anything, a car door, a window opening, some clue I'd missed. But the street stayed empty and still, and I've replayed it in my mind ever since. Because here's what I can't explain, even now. Why did the volume never change no matter where I was on the hill? How could it sound so close when every door and window looked shut on a cold night? And why did it stop exactly at the top, the moment I reached it, like that was some invisible boundary the sound couldn't cross? Nothing else happened after that. I got home safely. No shadowy figure, no dramatic ending. Just a quiet apartment, and the uncomfortable feeling that, for a few minutes on that hill, I was walking alongside something I couldn't see. Hey, okay, I'm just gonna say it the way it is, even though I know it sounds like one of those stories people roll their eyes at. I'm a mom, and my little boy is 3, and for a long time now, he's been talking to my brother. Except my brother passed away a few months before my son was even born. I know how that sounds. But here's the thing. My kid says things he shouldn't be able to know. And when he sees my brother, he calls him Uncle Jame, which isn't even my brother's name. It's just what he started saying on his own. His whole face changes. Like his eyes brighten up and he gets this excited, happy energy. Like someone just walked into the room that he loves. At first, I honestly let it be. I was like, okay, maybe it's a sweet imagination thing. Maybe it's a kid processing family stories, whatever. It felt harmless, kind of comforting even. But then it shifted. He started getting scared of his bedroom. Not like normal, I don't want to go to bed stuff. This was different. He was adamant, like full body no. And when I asked why, he kept pointing at the mirror and saying something like, "It comes out. It flies out and goes on the fan." Like the ceiling fan. I laughed the first time. I did. Because what else do you do when your toddler says something that wild? But he didn't laugh. He looked genuinely freaked out. So I took the mirror down. And the night I did, he finally slept in there again. Which made my stomach drop, because now I'm standing there holding a mirror like, why did that work? I started looking for answers, mostly because I didn't know what I was supposed to do with any of this. And yeah, I posted a few videos online, just little clips, because I kept thinking, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe other parents will tell me, my kid did that too. And instead, it kind of blew up. People were messaging me like, I believe you, and watch his eyes, and he's tracking something. And honestly, that part messed with my head, because I hadn't felt anything in the house. No weird vibes, nothing. Even though my dad did hospice at home and he passed here, so, the house has definitely held hard moments, but it never felt bad to me. Until last weekend. Last weekend, I decided to film a normal little vlog in the same bedroom my son avoids. Just me unboxing inventory. Super boring, like literally talking about makeup and packaging and my shelves being a mess. I was rambling about this foundation I'd been trying, joking around. Nothing even remotely spooky. And later, when I went to edit the footage, I heard it. Clear as day, there were words in the audio that I did not say. It was a man's voice. And I swear on everything, it sounded like it said my name, like Mara, and then something right after that, like help me, or hurt me, or something in that zone. I kept replaying it, trying to make it turn into something innocent, trying to be like, no, it's just interference. It's just the mic rubbing against my shirt. But it wasn't. It wasn't that kind of sound. And the worst part is, I wasn't even using a cheap setup. It was one of those noise-canceling mic packs clipped directly into my phone. I've used it a ton. I've recorded in noisy places. I've filmed serious stuff, loud stuff, regular stuff, and I've never, ever had random voices show up in my audio. So that's the moment I got freaked out. Like truly freaked out. But this wasn't me wanting to hear something. This was me going, please don't be what I think it is. And then replaying it anyway. And now I'm stuck in this place where I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm not trying to debate strangers. I'm not trying to be that person online. I just want to understand what's happening in my own house. And more than that, I want to understand what's happening with my kid. Because here's the heart of it. He looks at me and goes, "Mom, do you see it? What is that? Mom, do you see that thing?" And what am I supposed to say? I don't want to lie to him and be like, "Yep, I see it," when I don't. But I also don't want to shut him down and make him feel crazy, or like he can't talk to me, or like I'm dismissing him. So lately I've been trying to walk this weird tightrope where I'm like, "What does it look like, buddy?" And I let him explain. And then I'll say something like, "I believe that you see something. Mommy just can't see it." And I'll be honest, it feels awkward coming out of my mouth. Communication isn't my strongest thing. My brain doesn't always pick the perfect words in the moment. Half the time I'm just trying not to look scared, because I don't want him to absorb my fear. Some people told me to teach him he can tell it to go away. So we've practiced that. Like, you can say, "Go away" if it's bothering you. And sometimes he does. But lately it's been happening more. Like, more rooms, more moments, more little alarms in the day. Today it was under the kitchen table. He pointed and said, "Do you see it, Mom? It's like a bee." A bee. And I'm crouched on the floor staring at nothing under my table thinking, okay, what are we doing right now? What is my life? And I know I sound like I'm rambling. I am rambling. My kids are with their dad this weekend. The house is quiet. My brain won't turn off. And I'm sitting here going in circles trying to make sense of it. I'm not here for karma. I'm not here to argue with people about whether spirits are real. Nobody's opinion changes the fact that I still have to parent through this. I guess what I'm asking is, if you were a kid who saw things, what would you have wanted your parent to do? What would have made you feel safe? Because I don't want to teach my son to be afraid of his own eyes. But I also don't want to accidentally encourage something that's scaring him. I just want to show up for him in the right way. And right now, I don't know what the right way is. So, my partner Evan and I have been reading these kinds of stories together late at night. Just for fun, you know? And at some point we both kind of paused and went, wait, we actually have one of these. We're not even posting it like we know what happened. It's more like, I'm genuinely curious if anyone's felt something similar, because it still messes with my head sometimes. This was summer of 2023, and it was me, Evan, and his sister Marisol. We were in that phase where paranormal stuff feels like a hobby. Ghost videos, creepy podcasts, the whole thing. And I'll be honest, we were usually a little tipsy when we went exploring, which, yeah. Looking back, it's embarrassing how unserious we were about it. Not respectful, just treating it like entertainment. We lived really close to this local cemetery, like maybe a 5-minute walk. And Marisol and I went a lot. Not once or twice, like dozens of times. We'd wander the paths, read headstones, talk about what we thought we felt. The cemetery had 2 distinct areas. One side felt normal enough. Lamps, open space, you could breathe. But the other side, everyone agreed it was different. It felt heavy, like the air got thicker, like your body noticed before your brain did. One night, we went a little later than usual. It was quiet. Too quiet. The way it gets when you can hear your own steps. And for some reason, I decided I wanted to walk through the darker side. I remember acting like it was no big deal, like I was proving something. But as soon as we crossed into that section, I felt this pull. That's the only word that fits. Not a sound, not a voice, just this weird, steady tug forward, like something was drawing me in, gently but insistently. and I kept looking over my shoulder again and again, without even fully understanding why. It wasn't curiosity. It was like my instincts were trying to check behind me. Evan noticed immediately. He got that tone in his voice, calm but firm, like, "Turn around, let's go back." He actually started guiding us back toward the brighter side. I tried to laugh it off, like, okay, we're leaving." But even as I said it, the feeling didn't stop. It stuck to me the whole walk out, like static under my skin. And here's this tiny detail that might matter, or might not, but I can't not mention it. Around the same time, Evan picked up something from a grave. Not like a whole bouquet, just a little loose ribbon with a flower charm, something that had fallen off an arrangement. He wasn't being malicious. It was more like, "Oh, this is sad," and he just pocketed it. At the time, we didn't think anything of it. After that, things didn't go horror movie instantly. It was gradual. So gradual that we didn't connect it right away. The first thing we noticed was this smell in the trailer we were living in. A perfume smell, but not a modern one. It was so specific, like an old-fashioned perfume you'd imagine in a vintage glass bottle. Powdery, sweet, almost too elegant. And it wasn't faint. It was overwhelming, like someone had sprayed it in the air on purpose. We'd walk into a room and it would just be there. No candles, no sprays, nothing spilled, nothing we owned. And it didn't behave like a normal scent either. It didn't drift in from outside. It didn't come from one spot. It just hung in the air like it belonged there. And then my energy started to feel wrong. I don't know how else to say it. I didn't feel sick. I wasn't anxious about anything specific. I just felt off-center. Like I couldn't fully settle into my own body. Like I was tired in a way sleep didn't fix. And what's creepy is that I didn't even need someone to validate it. I knew something had shifted. I remember going still. Like my whole chest dropped. And then he added, "It looks like a little boy." He wasn't trying to scare me. He didn't say it like a threat. He said it almost matter-of-factly. Like, "Oh, that's what that is." And the worst part was how fast my brain went. Yeah, that tracks. Because I already felt wrong. His words just gave it a shape. We didn't scream. We didn't run around panicking. It was more like we both quietly accepted that we'd crossed some line, whether it was disrespect, or curiosity, or that pull I felt, or him taking that little keepsake. Something about it felt like we invited something in without meaning to. So we did what people do when they're scared but trying to stay grounded. We smudged the trailer, opened windows, went room by room, tried to reset the space. And then we went back to the cemetery and returned what Evan had taken, right where it belonged. We didn't make a big show of it. We just put it back, said something simple, like, "Sorry, this isn't ours." And I'm not saying everything snapped back to normal instantly. It didn't. But over the next couple weeks, it started easing. The perfume smell stopped showing up. My body stopped feeling like it was humming with someone else's presence. The heaviness faded. And now, honestly, most days I don't think about it. But sometimes I'll catch a random scent, something vaguely antique and sweet, and my stomach will flip, just for a second. And I still wonder, was there actually something attached to me? Was that perfume a sign of someone trying to announce themselves? Did that pull in the darker part of the cemetery mean something was trying to lead me somewhere? Or bring something back with me? I don't know. I just know it felt real enough that we changed our behavior after that. And it's one of those experiences where, even years later, you can't fully laugh it off. Welcome to the Paranormal M channel. can't sleep again? No worries. Lie down, throw on your headphones, and turn on your nightlight. I'm going to share some of my own paranormal experiences with you. Hopefully, they'll help you relax. By the way, thank you so much for sending in your stories. Please keep them coming. I genuinely love doing this. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so let me tell you about this weird little piece of my childhood. My grandparents had these close friends, an elderly couple named Arthur and Mabel. They were the kindest people. Arthur always smelled like pipe tobacco and wood polish, and Mabel baked something every time you blinked. They had this old lamp in their house, and for as long as I can remember, they told the strangest story about it. Now this lamp was old, like 1920s Art Deco old, with a heavy brass base and a stained glass shade that always looked a little too fragile. And according to them, for more than 40 years, the same thing kept happening. The light bulb would just vanish. Not burn out, not flicker and die, actually disappear. They'd be sitting there reading, light on, everything normal, and then at some point, they'd realize the lamp was dark. They'd come over to check, and the whole bulb would be gone. Later, it would turn up somewhere else in the house. Sometimes in obvious places, like right in the middle of the living room floor, or in the little drawer under the lamp. But sometimes it got absurd. They told me about the times it showed up in the bathroom sink, once in the freezer, sitting on top of a bag of peas. One bulb was found inside the tank of the toilet, years later, when Arthur finally opened it to fix the flusher. The one that really got me, though, was when they found it inside the lamp's own base. You actually had to unscrew a little panel with a screwdriver to get in there. They joked that if it ever appeared in the car, they were moving. When I was younger, I just thought it was a funny, exaggerated story. You know how older folks sometimes have that one running joke that never dies? They'd say, "Oh, guess where the lamp bulb was this time?" And I'd laugh and roll my eyes. It was just part of being at their house. Then I saw it happen. I was about 11 when this all went from cute story to, okay, what the hell? My grandmother got really sick and ended up in the hospital for a while, so I stayed with Arthur and Mabel for about a week. They put me in the guest bedroom, and of course, that's where the infamous lamp lived. The lamp sat on a little wooden bedside table, maybe 2 feet from my head when I lay down. For the first couple of nights, they left it on for me. I actually preferred that. It made the strange house feel a little less unfamiliar. So the lamp stayed on all night, this warm yellow glow in the corner of the room. By the third night, I was used to it. I remember checking the old digital clock on the dresser. It was around 2:47 a.m., something oddly specific that just burned into my brain. I wasn't fully asleep, more in that fuzzy in-between state, wrapped up in the blankets. And then, suddenly, the room went dark. No slow flicker, no pop, just instant black. I jolted awake, heart hammering. The door didn't open. Nobody came in. I didn't hear footsteps or anything. It was just dark, completely. The kind of dark where your brain starts inventing shapes. My only decent light source was my little silver Nintendo DS, so I flipped it open and cranked the brightness all the way up. That cold blue glow felt like a lifeline. I slid out of bed, walked the 2 steps to the table, and pointed the DS screen at the lamp. No bulb. I don't mean it was loose. I don't mean it had fallen onto the table. I mean the socket was empty, completely empty. And I swear to you, I had looked at that lamp right before trying to fall asleep. The light had been on. There's no way I wouldn't have noticed if it went dark earlier. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I just lay there, alternating between playing and listening to every tiny creak the house made, absolutely convinced that if I looked up, that bulb would be floating in midair or something. Morning finally came. Sunlight was leaking around the curtains, and I could hear Arthur banging around in the kitchen. Eventually, I went out and told him what happened. I tried to sound casual, but my voice was shaking. He raised his eyebrows, gave me this little half smile, and said, "Ah, lamp got you, did it?" We went back to the guest room together to look for the bulb. We checked the floor, the bed, under the table. Nothing. Then Arthur reached for the drawer under the lamp. Now, this is important. That drawer was on these old metal rails that screamed every time you opened it. It was loud enough that you'd cringe when you pulled it out. I know because I had opened it earlier to see if there were any books or comics in there. I would have definitely heard it if someone had messed with it in the night. Arthur gripped the handle, yanked it open, screech! And there it was, the bulb, just sitting there in the middle of the drawer, like it had always belonged. He nodded, like this was the most normal thing in the world, and said, "That's the most common place it likes to end up." And I just stood there, skin crawling, because I knew that drawer hadn't opened once while I was in that room. There was no way. It was inches from my head when I slept. That awful metal squeal was impossible to miss. But somehow, between the moment the light went out and the moment the sun came up, the bulb had gone from the lamp, 2 feet from my face, to inside that noisy drawer without a sound. To this day, I can't explain it. I've tried. I've thought about loose fixtures, about someone playing a prank, about my memory being weird because I was half asleep. But every version of that night I replay in my mind hits the same impossible detail. I would have heard that drawer. Years later, after my grandmother's funeral in 2013, I saw Arthur and Mabel one last time. They were both in their early 90s then, still holding hands like teenagers. We didn't talk about the lamp that day. It didn't feel like the moment. After that, I lost touch. The next time I drove past their house, there was a different car in the driveway. Sleek, modern. The kind of thing I couldn't imagine either of them ever driving. I assume they're gone now, and I don't know what happened to that old lamp. Maybe it's in a thrift store somewhere, sitting quietly on a dusty shelf, pretending to be normal. Maybe someone else owns it now and occasionally finds a stray bulb in a place that makes no sense. All I know is that, as a kid, I laughed at their stories. And ever since that one sleepless night, I've never laughed at that lamp again. So, this all happened about 12 years ago, and honestly, I still don't know what to do with it. Let me back up a bit. On my mom's side of the family, things were complicated. My mom, Elena, never really got along with my dad's side, and over time, the tension spread to her own family too. In the late 80s, after a lot of drama that I only know in pieces, she cut off all contact with her parents and siblings. Just done. No calls, no visits, nothing. Because of that, I grew up never meeting my maternal grandparents. I knew they existed, obviously, but they were these vague, ghost-like figures in stories my mom almost never told. No photos around the house, no holiday cards, no, "we should visit them someday." Just silence. Fast forward to around 2012. My mom's father, my grandfather, whom I'd never met, was dying of lung cancer. He was in his late 70s by then. Word somehow got to my mom through one of her sisters that he was trying to make amends before he passed. He wanted to see her again. He wanted to see his grandkids. And my mom? She surprised me. One evening, she sat me down at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had gone cold. She said, "Alex, your grandfather is very sick. He doesn't have much time left. He wants to see me, and he asked if he could meet you." I could see the war going on in her face. Part of her was still that hurt daughter from the 80s, but another part of her was a tired woman who didn't want to carry old grudges anymore. She said, "I'm going to go. I think I need to. But whether you come or not, that's up to you. I won't force you." And I remember thinking, I've gone my whole life not knowing this man, but this might be my only chance. Curiosity and a weird sense of, I don't know, duty, sort of mixed together. So I told her, okay, I'll go. If it means something to him, I'll be there. There's another piece you need for this to make sense. Back then, I had a girlfriend, Sophia. For our 2-year anniversary, I saved up and bought her this delicate silver ring with a tiny blue stone in it. We were at this old seaside amusement pier, one of those places with creaky wooden planks and neon lights that buzz a little too loudly. I gave her the ring while we were at the top of the Ferris wheel, looking out over the water. It was a whole cinematic moment, and I was really proud of myself. She wore that ring all the time, like never took it off. And then one weekend, she went to this outdoor concert with some friends. Big crowd, dancing, people bumping into each other, the usual. Later that night, she called me, almost in tears, saying, "Alex, I lost the ring. It just slipped off somewhere. I've looked everywhere. I'm so sorry." I spent the next day calling the venue, messaging their lost and found page, even going down there once to walk around the field myself, staring at the ground like an idiot. But imagine trying to find a tiny silver ring in a field where thousands of people had been dancing all night. It was gone. I accepted that eventually, but it still stung. Okay, so that's all in the background. Now to the visit. My mom and I drove over to the hospice where my grandfather, his name was Victor, was staying. I remember being more nervous than I expected. Like, what do you say to someone who's your grandfather but also basically a stranger? We walked into his room, and he looked small. Smaller than I'd pictured. Thin, gray, hooked up to tubes, but his eyes were sharp. Really sharp. When he saw my mom, I swear his whole face rearranged, like all the years without her just collapsed at once. They hugged and both cried a little, and I kind of stood there awkwardly like, "Hi, I'm your grandson, no big deal." We talked for a while, mostly small talk at first, where I was studying, what I liked to do. He told me a couple of stories about my mom as a teenager, stuff I'd never heard, and my mom just kept wiping her eyes and laughing. Later that afternoon, his pain got pretty bad. The nurse came in and gave him a dose of morphine through his IV. After a few minutes, his speech got slower, and eventually, he drifted off to sleep. My mom and I sat there quietly, just listening to the machines and the muffled sounds from the hallway. About an hour later, he woke up. He blinked a few times, looked around the room, and then said, very calmly, "I just had the strangest dream." My mom leaned in a bit and said, "What did you dream, Papa?" He turned his head toward me, though, like he was talking mostly to me, and said, "There was a young woman with a beautiful ring, silver with a small blue stone. She loved it very much. She was at this big outdoor festival with music playing and everyone dancing. But in the middle of all those people, the ring slipped off her finger." He paused for a moment and closed his eyes, like he could still see it. "She dropped it into the crowd," he went on, "and people were dancing, stepping on it, pushing it into the ground. She tried to find it, but the more she searched, the more it disappeared. In the end, there was nothing left to pick up." My mom and I just stared at each other. She knew about Sophia's ring. She knew where it had been lost. But we had never told anyone in her family any of that. There hadn't even been contact with them. No phone calls, no mutual friends, nothing. I kind of laughed, but it came out shaky. I said something like, "That's oddly specific." Inside, though, I felt this cold shiver run down my spine. We tried to shrug it off as a coincidence. Strange, but still technically possible, right? Plenty of people lose rings. Plenty of people go to concerts. You can rationalize it if you try hard enough. The day went on. Sometimes he would drift off mid-sentence, then wake up and pick up the conversation like nothing had happened. At one point, he started talking about the man with the cape. He said there was a man standing in the living room, his living room, not the hospice room, wearing a long, dark cape. Victor kept glancing toward the corner of the hospice room, like he could see him there. He told my mom, "He's waiting. When I grab his cape, he'll take me with him. Then I'll be on the other side." The way he said it was so matter-of-fact, not scared, not dramatic, just sure. My mom squeezed his hand and said, "You don't have to go with him yet." He smiled a little and said, "I know, not yet." Now, here's where it goes from odd to what on earth. Before we left that evening, my mom leaned over to hug him goodbye. I stepped out into the hallway to give them a moment alone. I could see them from the doorway, though, just talking quietly. Then he reached up, took my mom's hand, pulled her closer, and whispered something in her ear. On the drive home, she was weirdly quiet. I figured she was just emotional from seeing him again after so many years. Finally, halfway down the highway, she said, very softly, "Victor knew something he shouldn't have known." I asked, "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath and told me what he had whispered. He'd said, "Don't let your husband die on that highway. Don't let him end his life there. It won't solve anything. He's stronger than that. Please, remind him. Tell him I said so." Now, you have to understand something. About 10 years earlier, when I was still a kid, my dad had gone through this horrible period at work. The company he worked for manipulated a situation after his own father died and basically tried to push him out while he was grieving. He was exhausted, burned out, and felt completely trapped. Only my mom and my dad knew about that moment. They never told my grandparents on either side. They never told friends. It wasn't some family story that got passed around. It was a secret pain shared by two people and buried. And yet, years later, as he lay dying, with zero contact for decades, my grandfather somehow told my mom, "Don't let your husband end his life on that highway." Not just, "Don't let him do something stupid," or "take care of him." He mentioned the highway, that specific place, that specific act. When my mom told me that in the car, we both just sat there in stunned silence. I remember watching the road blur past and thinking, there's no way he could have known that. None. We tried to reason our way out of it. Maybe he guessed. Maybe he was just saying something symbolic. Maybe it was all morphine-induced rambling and we were connecting dots that weren't there. But then there was the ring, the concert, the color of the stone. Too many details, too specific. Even now, I don't know what to call it. A coincidence? Some kind of strange intuition that people get when they're close to death? Something spiritual? Something in his subconscious that picked up on things no one had told him? I just know this. We had no contact with that side of the family for decades. There were no shared stories, no social media stalking, no quiet phone calls between relatives filling him in. And yet, in one single day, he spoke about two events he should never have known anything about. A lost ring at a crowded festival, and a silent, terrifying moment on a highway 10 years earlier. And in the middle of all of that, he kept talking about the man with the cape, waiting patiently to walk him to the other side. I still don't fully understand what happened in that room, but I think about it a lot. And every time I'm on that highway with my dad in the passenger seat, or at some crowded event where people are dancing and something small could get lost under their feet, those words come back to me. My grandfather's voice, quiet but certain. He's stronger than that. Don't let him end his life on that highway. Some things you just carry with you, even when you can't explain them. This isn't some epic ghost hunter saga or anything, but if anyone's going to appreciate it, it's probably you. I moved into my first little house about 6 months ago. It's one of those older places, maybe 80, 90 years old, in a small mid-Atlantic town that used to be a big stop for travelers. Old train station, brick storefronts, creaky porches, the kind of place where nobody would blink if you said, "Yeah, that house is probably haunted." Most of what I was doing was basic, new homeowner with too much optimism stuff. Painting, patching, arguing with YouTube tutorials. My dad, Mark, was helping me out, along with my mom, Elena. And in that order, Dad, me, then Mom. We all had these tiny, quick, really specific weird moments that stopped as abruptly as they started. The first thing happened to my dad. We were in the hallway by the old kitchen, and there's this antique doorbell still mounted on the wall. One of those metal chime setups with little plates and coils, the kind that looks like it belongs in a black and white movie. It's not hooked up to a button anymore, but the transformer is still live. I was in the next room rolling paint when I heard Dad go quiet. Then I hear it too. This faint, tinkling ding-ding, like someone was gently messing with the chimes. Not a full ring, more like fingers brushing the metal. Dad looks at me and goes, "Did you hear that?" We stood there for a second listening, but it didn't happen again. We figured maybe it was some kind of electrical interference or vibration from us moving around, and we shrugged it off. Very logical, very boring explanation. And for the record, it has never done it again. Not once. A little while later, days, maybe weeks, Dad was upstairs replacing an outlet in the guest room. I was sitting on the floor behind him with a screwdriver, pretending I knew what I was doing. The stairs come up right outside that room, and from where I was sitting, I could see the top few steps. Out of nowhere, Dad just freezes mid-sentence and turns his head toward the stairs. I'm like, "What?" He squints for a second and says, "I could have sworn I saw a cat just walk up the steps." He described it as this small, dark cat, tail up, trotting up like it knew the place. The thing is, I saw movement too, just in the corner of my eye, like a shadow drifting past the doorway. But when we both leaned out to look, there was nothing. No cat, no sound, just empty stairs. Now, we're both pretty skeptical people. This is the same guy I once sat with on the porch of our family cabin at night, listening to what sounded like heavy boots pacing back and forth on the wooden deck. Clear as day, like someone was patrolling, but no one was there when we checked. Even then, we were like, okay, weird, but there's gotta be some explanation. So with the cat, we were like, shadow, trick of the light, tired eyes, whatever. And then it was my turn. One night around some truly awful hour, like 3 in the morning, I woke up thirsty. You know that half-asleep shuffle where you're basically a ghost yourself? That was me, dragging into the kitchen with the lights off except for the little glow over the stove. The staircase that leads up to the second floor is just off the kitchen, sort of behind me as I open the fridge. I'm standing there, door open, the light spilling into the room, staring blankly at a carton of orange juice like it's a life decision. And from right behind me, down low, near the base of those stairs, I hear this perfectly clear, loud little "meow?" Not a vague creak, not pipes, not a weird house noise. A cat. A very present, very normal-sounding cat meow. The kind you'd hear if you walked into someone's house and their cat wanted attention. Nothing. No cat on the stairs, no cat in the kitchen, no cat anywhere. And I don't own a cat. I don't even have so much as a bag of cat food in the house. I checked anyway, because of course I did. Opened doors, peeked into corners, even looked outside in case a neighborhood cat had somehow slipped in. It was just me and a very quiet, very old house. I tried to be rational about it. Maybe the house made a weird noise. Maybe my sleepy brain filled it in as a meow. Whatever. It bothered me, but not in a I'm moving out way. More like, that's going in the weird things my house does file. The last thing happened to my mom, and honestly, hers is the one that stuck with me the most. It was a bright afternoon, good light, windows open, absolutely not the setting for a spooky story. My mom was sitting on the couch in the living room, flipping through her phone while I was messing with some shelves. All of a sudden she looks up and asks, very casually, "Did you see that little gray and white cat just walk out of here?" I blink and go, "What cat?" She points toward the doorway that leads into the front hallway and says, "It walked right past the coffee table, tail up, and then just kept going that way." And then she kind of laughs nervously and adds, "Through the wall." She said it like she was trying not to freak herself out, but she was pale. She described this small, short-haired cat with a white chest and gray patches, just strolling out of the living room like it owned the place, and then disappearing straight into the wall where there definitely is no doorway. Now, my mom is a believer. She already knew about Dad thinking he'd seen a cat on the stairs, and she knew about me hearing the phantom meow. So there's this part of my brain going, okay, maybe her mind filled in the blanks. Maybe she wanted it to be a ghost cat. But there's another part of me that remembers how specific she was, the way she said it, the way she kept replaying its path with her finger, like, it walked right there. And here's the strangest part of the whole thing. After that moment, after my mom watched this little gray and white cat just ghost itself through the living room wall, nothing else weird has happened in the house. No more chimes, no more shadows on the stairs, no more mysterious meows in the middle of the night. Just silence. Regular old creaks and pops and HVAC noises. It's like whoever, or whatever, was there finished their little inspection and moved on. So now I'm stuck with this question that I can't quite shake. Were those all coincidences? A powered old doorbell humming at the wrong time, tired eyes catching shadows, a sleepy brain mishearing a sound, and a believer's imagination topping it off. Or, and this is the version I secretly kind of like, was there a local stray passing through? Some little ghost cat doing rounds in an old house in a historic town, just making sure the new human was okay before heading off to wherever ghost cats go. I don't know. I'm still a skeptic. Mostly. But sometimes, when I'm locking up for the night and I walk past the bottom of the stairs, I still catch myself saying, quietly, "Good night, buddy," just in case there's a small, unseen cat listening. So, let me just start by saying, I've never been a full-on non-believer. If anything, I've always kind of wanted to see something. Like, if ghosts are real, cool, let me meet one, right? But now I think I'm actually dealing with something. A ghost, an entity, some leftover energy, I don't know. And it's starting to mess with my ability to work, and I honestly don't know what to do with that. I'm a sound engineer at a big live theater downtown. I started there in early April. The original building went up in the late 1950s, and then they slapped on this huge addition around, 1999. And when I say slapped on, I mean they did it cheap. The layout is ridiculous. There are half floors, like 2.5, 3.5, random staircases to nowhere. If you've worked in live theater, you know the catwalk is never conveniently near the sound or lighting booth, and this place is like a case study in that. The whole building is basically a maze held together by gaffer tape and wishful thinking. Part of my job has basically become figure out whatever nonsense the last people left behind. Untangle cables, trace weird signal paths, label things that should have been labeled 10 years ago. There's this one room we call B17. It's technically at the highest point of the building, but because of the weird floor system, it ended up with that random name. It's also the only room up there. That's where we keep all the really long sound cables, like anything over 50 feet. So I'm up there a lot, just coiling and labeling and trying to bring order to chaos. To get to B17 from my office, you have to go through this bizarre little stair hallway situation. It's like someone started building a stairwell, got bored halfway through, and just kept adding turns. No windows, all concrete, and when the lights are off, it is pitch black. Like, if your phone dies, you live there now. There are several old push-button light switches up there. They are not motion-activated. They are not on timers. I have tested them thoroughly because of what happened next. One afternoon, I'm in B17, sitting on the floor with a pile of cables, labeling them by length. It's quiet. I'm in the zone. And suddenly, the hallway light clicks off. I instantly get annoyed because I assume it's our stage manager, Lena, messing with something in the little booth that's connected to that hallway. She's great, but she loves pressing buttons. So I sigh, grab my phone flashlight, and stomp down that dark hallway to tell her to knock it off. Except, she's not there. The booth is empty. And when I look at the clock, it hits me. She's not even scheduled to be in the building for another 3 hours. So now I'm unsettled. I don't love unexplained stuff when I'm alone in a concrete tunnel. But I tell myself the usual rational things, you know? Old building, faulty wiring, whatever. I go back up to B17 and keep working. A few minutes later, the lights go off again. At this point, I'm irritated and a little freaked out, so I blurt out loud, "Okay, will you knock it off, please?" And the lights click back on. Not flicker, not slowly fade back, just click, on. I stand there, looking at the switch, looking at the ceiling, trying to decide if I'm being pranked or if I've finally lost my grip on reality. In the end, I tell myself it's just some weird fluke and I let it go. Old buildings do strange things, right? The next day, though, something happens that I cannot explain away with old building. I come in the next day. I am the first one in. And that set piece is annihilated. Not just a little broken. The cart is tilted, one wheel snapped, and the glass dome is shattered into pieces all over the stage. Props scattered like somebody threw a tantrum. The platform under it is fine, like nothing else was touched. So I'm standing there thinking, either someone came in after hours, broke in just to wage war on a dessert cart, or I really pissed something off when I yelled in that hallway. What makes this weirder is that most of the places where my instincts go on high alert, the spots where my hackles go up, are in the newer part of the building. B17, that whole hallway system, a couple of the newer catwalks. You'd assume haunted equals old original wing, right? But the unsettling stuff, for me, is mostly in the addition. And then my brain starts doing that thing where it rewinds my entire time there, looking for moments that felt off. The first time I felt it was actually in the original 1950s stage, underneath the deck. I had to install speakers under there. The trap space is huge, like 100 feet across, but low. I'm about 6 foot, and my back just barely clears the beams when I'm walking through. It's dusty, full of old wiring, forgotten props, random bits of lumber. I'm not claustrophobic at all. Crawl spaces, basements, tight catwalks, never been a problem for me. But under that stage, I kept having these waves of get out. Not panic, exactly. Just this heavy feeling that someone was right behind me, watching. Every time I'd stop and turn around, of course, there would be nothing but darkness and plywood. So here's where I'm stuck. I am a skeptic. I am that person who is usually explaining away weird stuff, not encouraging it. But whatever is happening here, it feels different. It feels intentional. And as completely unscientific as this sounds, I cannot shake the feeling that whatever it is a kid. Not evil, not super malevolent, more like mischievous, easily offended maybe, curious. Today was the first day I felt like it was actually following me. I'd be in the new wing, feel that little prickle at the back of my neck, then head to the old stage, and a few minutes later the same feeling would show up there too, like it was trailing me from space to space. And that's where I'm kind of losing it, because it's palpable. It's not just, oh, I creeped myself out. It's like walking into a room where someone's just had an argument. You can't see it, but the air feels thick. I don't get the sense it wants to hurt me, but I also really need to be able to do my job without wondering if some invisible 10-year-old is going to murder the hallway lights or trash another set piece. I've been asking myself, do you talk to these things? Is that a good idea? A bad idea? I can't burn sage or anything dramatic because, fire alarms and sprinkler systems and, hey, why is the sound guy smoking out the building? So for now, I've just been acknowledging it. When the lights flicker or I get that watched feeling, I'll say something like, hey, I'm just working. Please don't mess with the gear, okay? I feel ridiculous, talking to what might just be bad wiring and my overactive brain. But it also feels ruder not to. Whatever it is, ghost, energy, my subconscious having a field day, this whole thing has been wild. And as much as it freaks me out, a tiny part of me is like, well, you wanted to see something. So, I'm still kind of shaky talking about this, but I'll walk you through it from the beginning. First off, a bunch of people had suggested carbon monoxide when I told them what happened. So I went to my husband, Evan, and I'm like, hey, a lot of people are saying this could be a carbon monoxide thing. He looks at me and goes, we've got a detector, remember? I checked the batteries last month. He reminds me we don't even have gas lines running to the house. Everything's electric. The generator out back hasn't been used in months. Our garage is basically a storage unit now. No cars running in there, nothing. We actually went through the whole maybe it's mold scare less than 6 months ago because my kid and I kept feeling run down and gross all the time. We had the place checked. Came back clear. And Evan's a licensed electrician who inspects buildings and signs off on them being up to code. So he's super strict about stuff like carbon monoxide and smoke detectors. He's always checking them and making sure they're working. So we went down that list. Detectors, mold, gas lines, everything. It really doesn't look like that's what's going on, but I'm still keeping it in the back of my mind and staying alert, just in case. Okay, now for the part that's got me genuinely freaked out. A few hours ago, Evan came home from work. It was earlier than he usually gets in, but he'd told me it was a training day, so I wasn't surprised. Nothing about it felt weird at all. He comes through the door, calls out, "Hey, Em," walks over, gives me a quick kiss, asks how my day's going. I ask how his training went. Totally normal back and forth, the same everyday kind of comfort you don't even think about. Then he says he's going to change, so he heads to the bathroom for a minute, like he always does. After that, he wanders into the living room and says something like, "I'm gonna try that new Elden Ring build people keep talking about." He grabs his controller, plops down in his beanbag, starts messing with the console. Very ordinary, very him. I wander off into the other room and start scrolling on my phone. Social media, nothing interesting. I'm just zoning out. After a while, I realize the house is really quiet. Like, too quiet for someone supposedly playing a video game. So I call out, "Babe?" Nothing. So I try again, louder this time. "Babe?" Still no answer. At this point I'm thinking, okay, maybe he passed out in his beanbag. Wouldn't be the first time. So I walk into the living room. And he's not there. Beanbag is empty. TV is off. Controller's on the table. Now I'm confused, but I'm not panicking yet. I check the kitchen. Not there. Our bedroom. Not there. Bathroom. Empty. I do a lap through the house. Kids' room, Office, guest room, nothing. I think, okay, maybe he stepped into the garage or backyard without saying anything, which would be weird for him, but still possible. I check the backyard. No Evan. Garage? Just boxes and junk. No husband. I even walk around to the side yard and then to the front door. And that's when I see it. His work van is gone. That's when my stomach drops. Because this man does not leave the house without at least calling out, "Love you, see you later," and giving me a kiss. Not once in all these years. Not his style at all. So now I'm like, did he really just walk out without saying goodbye? That alone is enough to make me feel off. I grab my phone and call him. It goes straight to voicemail. Before I can even spiral, he texts me. "Hey, everything okay?" "Am I okay? Babe, where did you go?" He replies, "I can't talk right now. I'm still in CPR training. What's going on?" I'm just frozen. CPR training. So I tell him, "What are you talking about? You came home early. We talked. You changed. You were in the living room playing your game and then you just disappeared." He sends back, "Em, I haven't left work yet. I kissed you goodbye this morning. I've been here all day. My badge never even left the building, and the door camera didn't ping once." At this point, I'm actually pacing. I'm 45 years old. I have never hallucinated in my life. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I wasn't sleep deprived. I wasn't sick. I remember the weight of his hug, the way his shirt felt, the tone of his voice when he asked about my day, the sound of the bathroom door, the way he joked about his game. So I tell him, "I had a whole conversation with you. You hugged me. You went to the bathroom. I heard you. What do you mean you haven't been home?" He's confused and a little freaked out too, and he says, "Then it wasn't me." And no alerts went off on the ring. No door, no motion, nothing. That's when a different fear creeps in. Not the carbon monoxide kind. The other kind. The "we've been through this before" kind. Because here's the thing. When we first moved into this house, we had something. We used to joke about it, call it a house guest. We even gave it a name, Rowan, because at first it was just harmless little pranks. Lights flickering, keys showing up in random places, doors we knew we closed being slightly open. We brushed it off as old house quirks and our own forgetfulness. Until it escalated. It started with me feeling touches in my sleep. At first it was just like someone lightly tapping my leg or brushing my hair. I told myself it was dreams or the blanket shifting. Then one night, something grabbed my ankle and yanked hard enough to pull my foot out from under the covers. That was the night I sat up in bed, heart racing, and thought, okay, no, that wasn't a dream. I was scared enough that I actually looked up local paranormal groups because I didn't know what else to do. Evan, being the practical, grounded one, kind of shrugged it off. He said it was probably just my imagination, or a sleep thing. He didn't fully believe it, until it happened to him. One night, I'm half asleep and I hear him swear under his breath and jolt upright. Later he tells me, something grabbed my foot, like full-on grabbed it and yanked it. And this is a man who does not spook easily. He was pale. That was when both of us stopped laughing it off. Fast forward a bit. Last year in February, our house got chosen for a renovation show. Full-on makeover, new walls, new layout, new everything. While we were staying elsewhere, the production team arranged for a chaplain to come and bless the house before the big reveal. We never mentioned Rowan. We didn't say a word about any of it. After the renovations were done and we moved back in, everything was quiet. No footsteps, no flickering that couldn't be explained, no more touches in the middle of the night. It's been about 16 months of peace. To be totally honest, there were moments I almost missed the playful version of whatever that was. But mostly, we were incredibly grateful it all just stopped. And then today happened. And then, without a door opening, without a camera alert, without a sound, it was gone. Along with his van that, apparently, never left his work parking lot. So now I'm sitting here, going through every possibility in my head. Did my brain glitch? Was it some kind of stress episode? But then why did it feel so physically real? Why could I describe the smell of his cologne, the feel of his hoodie? Was it something pretending to be him? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I just know that it didn't feel like a fuzzy dream that faded when I woke up. It felt like real life, like any other afternoon I've spent with him. And then I checked my phone, and reality didn't line up with what I had just experienced. So that's where I'm at right now, caught between the logical explanations we've already ruled out and the weirdness I really truly thought was behind us. I'm staying alert. I'm double-checking the practical stuff, because I'm not about to ignore something that could be dangerous. But I'm also sitting with this really unsettling thought. Whatever showed up today knew exactly how to be my husband, and I have no idea why. Okay, so let me take you back for a second. I was in about 8th grade, and I'd been invited to this big birthday sleepover at my friend Hannah's house. Hannah and I both grew up in Christian homes, but our situations were pretty different. My house always felt peaceful, you know? Like even when things were stressful, there was this sense of safety. Hannah's place didn't feel like that. Her mom and her stepdad, well, technically her mom's boyfriend, Mark, were constantly fighting by then, and everyone kind of knew they were headed toward breaking up. There was just this heaviness in the house, even when they were being polite. Looking back now, I don't think it was a very safe, spiritual environment for her at all. Anyway, that night it was a classic slumber party. Snacks everywhere, cheesy movies on TV, somebody painted somebody else's nails bright blue, all of that. And of course, we got to the part of the night where someone goes, "We should play creepy games." So we did the usual ones. Bloody Mary in the bathroom mirror, light as a feather, stiff as a board in the living room. Someone tried to teach us how to use a homemade pendulum with a necklace over a piece of paper. Just middle school nonsense, you know? I was pretty naive about that stuff. I honestly didn't realize those games were supposed to be connected to anything spiritual or supernatural. If I'd understood that, I wouldn't have touched them. I had been taught really clearly not to mess with that kind of thing. So there we are, all piled into this big den, maybe 5 or 6 of us. The room was long, like maybe 15 by 20 feet. We were all clustered on one side of the room in front of the TV, blankets and pillows everywhere, a lamp on in the far corner, some random knickknacks on shelves. We had just finished another round of light as a feather, stiff as a board. And as usual, it worked. One girl, Maya, is like, "See? It works because it's supernatural." And that starts this whole debate. Most of us were like, "No, it's not. It's just physics." I remember literally saying something like, "Guys, if you shine a flashlight under your chin in the dark and stare into a mirror, of course you look creepy. That's the point. It doesn't mean there's a monster watching you." I was so matter-of-fact about it. And with the lifting game, I'm going, we have, 6 people lifting one girl? If she weighs like 90 pounds, that's 15 pounds each. That's not magic, that's math. I was fully team skeptic on the mechanics of it, even though I personally believed the supernatural was real. I just didn't think those things were it. I think the group broke down something like this. 4 or 5 of us thought it was totally natural and just fun party tricks. One girl was on the fence, and one girl, her name was Jenna, absolutely believed it was spiritual. So we're all talking over each other, kind of half laughing, half arguing, when Jenna suddenly goes, in this dramatic voice, "If there are any spirits here, show yourself." And my whole soul just went, oh no. You know that feeling when your stomach drops and you feel like you can't quite breathe right? That was me. I knew that was a terrible idea, but she said it so fast and so out of nowhere that I didn't have time to stop her. And we got an answer immediately. Remember, we're sitting on one side of the room. On the opposite wall, there's this small table with a heavy ceramic lamp on it, like the kind your grandma might have. The TV's in front of us, the lamp's way across from us. None of us are over there. We all go quiet at the same time. No one said, "Did you hear that?" or anything. We just knew something shifted. Not tip, not wobble. It slid. Slowly. Intentionally. Sideways. At least a foot across the surface of the table. You could hear the scrape of it against the wood. And then it went right over the edge and crashed onto the carpet. The lamp did not move toward us, so nobody could have been pulling a string from where we were. None of us had stood up. Nobody screamed until after it hit the ground. The only other people in the house were Hannah's mom and Mark, and we hadn't seen them for hours. It had to be around 1, maybe 2 in the morning at that point. The house was quiet except for us. The room just froze. I remember feeling this cold, heavy weight settle in my chest. Part of me wanted to jump up and run outside, and the other part of me couldn't make my legs move. Finally, one girl, braver than the rest of us, stood up and walked across the room to check the lamp. The rest of us sort of half-crawled, half-shuffled behind her, clinging to each other like ducklings. We were all desperate to find something normal. We checked under the table, around the base, on top. We looked for fishing line, string, a loose cord, anything. Nothing. The cord wasn't even stretched tight. It was just lying there. There was no way the plug would have been strong enough to drag that thing a whole foot across the table. And remember, this group was full of skeptics. A lot of us had older brothers who lived to torment us with elaborate pranks, so somebody set this up was absolutely our first thought. But Hannah was an only child. None of our brothers were there. Nobody had come in or out of that room. And the whole conversation that led up to Jenna calling out like that had just kind of spiraled there. No planning. No time to rig anything, even if someone had wanted to. Plus, Hannah was shaking. She kept saying, "I swear I didn't do anything. I didn't set this up. This isn't funny." And we believed her. You could see it in her face. She was done. We'd played those spooky games at other sleepovers before and never thought twice about them. The funny thing is, most of us never realized people actually took them as spiritual until that night. The one girl who did think they were supernatural just assumed everyone else knew that too. I wish I could tell you I figured out a clever, natural explanation later. I really do. I replayed that moment in my head so many times. Who was sitting where the cords were, whether maybe someone bumped the table and I just didn't notice. I still don't have an answer. What I do know is this: inviting something, anything, to show itself is not a game. That night burned that lesson into me. It's like that saying, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Don't throw open your doors like that, spiritually speaking, and then act surprised when something walks through. After the lamp fell, we weren't arguing anymore. Nobody wanted to keep debating whether our little party tricks were natural or supernatural. We were done. Someone quietly flipped on another light. We picked up the lamp, set it carefully back on the table, and kind of just sat there. The mood was gone. All the silly, giggly slumber party energy had evaporated. We decided we weren't playing any more games. We rolled out our sleeping bags, left the lights on, all of them, and tried to go to sleep. And every little creak and house noise that night, yeah, we heard all of it. To this day, I still think back to that moment as the night I learned not to go looking for things I didn't actually want to find. So, thank you for listening. This is one of those stories that still makes my body react like it's happening all over again, even though it's been decades. I'm going to talk to you like I'd talk to a close friend over coffee. But just know, inside, I'm still shaking a little. I grew up in a Christian home, but it wasn't the safe, cozy picture people sometimes imagine. My mom was the main source of the emotional abuse, sometimes physical too. My extended family had their own patterns of cruelty, and it all felt very generational, like this heavy script being passed down. My dad, let's call him David, was my spiritual rock. He loved God, he prayed, he tried. But he also enabled a lot of what was happening by not stopping it. So even my safe person was complicated. That's the backdrop to everything I'm about to tell you. I've had a few supernatural experiences in my life, but nothing like this one. Even now, when I think about it, I get that deep, animal-level fear. My heart speeds up, my body wants to run, and I feel physically unsafe just remembering. I'll do my best to put it into words, but part of what makes it so horrifying is that it almost refuses to fit into language. When I was a kid, about 10, maybe 11, I went to this church camp in the woods for a few days. It was late fall in the hills, cold enough that we needed the heaters on in the cabins, but not snowing or anything dramatic like that. There was a rumor going around camp that there was a ghost of an old groundskeeper haunting the place. Supposedly, he wandered near one of the older cabins at night. I knew it was nonsense. The haunted cabin everyone pointed to was where the counselors slept, and the camp itself wasn't even that old. I didn't believe in ghosts then, and I don't really now, at least not in the typical TV way. I'm a very rational, logical person by nature. I like science, and if something weird happens, my first instinct is to look for a natural explanation. I've never been into ghost hunting shows, mediums, any of that. Honestly, that stuff makes me deeply uncomfortable, like people are poking at things they don't understand. Anyway, that trip ended up being the last time I ever went to that camp. I refused to go back afterward. Our cabin had maybe 10 girls and a young adult counselor. I had a top bunk. The bunks were arranged in kind of a loose L shape around the room. My bed was against a wall, with this long, narrow window just to my left, up near the ceiling, higher than the tops of the other bunks. Outside, there was one of those tall security lights, and all night it cast this pale, steady beam through that skinny window. The cabin lights were off, of course, but that outside light made it so the room was never completely dark. Now, remember, it was chilly in there. The heaters kept it from freezing, but it wasn't exactly cozy. Sometime in the middle of the night, on my birthday actually, I snapped awake and sat straight up in my sleeping bag. No sleep paralysis, no half-dream state, just awake. And I was so hot. I was drenched in sweat, absolutely soaked inside my sleeping bag. I've had night sweats before and since, but this was like someone had poured warm water over me. My heart was pounding. My skin felt like it was burning from the inside out. And then I realized I wasn't reacting to a nightmare. I was reacting to something I was looking at. At first I thought, oh, it's just an adult checking on us. That would have made sense. The hallway was darker, and the shape I saw was darker still. So at first I tried to file it under grown-up making rounds. But then it stepped into the part of the room where that outside light was shining in from the window, and the light didn't touch it. I'm not just saying it was a dark figure in a bright room. I mean the light hit it and vanished. There was no outline, no reflection, no change in texture. It was like the light went in and never came back out. That's when my confusion shifted into something like, oh, this is wrong. This is not a person. As a kid, trying to describe what I saw, the image that came to mind was a cookie cutter. Like someone had taken a cookie cutter in the rough outline of an old person, bent shoulders, head, body, and pressed it into reality itself. Except instead of dough, they'd cut the shape out of the universe, not added something, removed something. It was the color of absence. That's the only way I can say it. People sometimes talk about shadow people, but shadows still obey light. This didn't. This was a presence made of nothing. It was black, but not any black I've ever seen. More like a hole, an absence, a moving cutout of wrongness. Every instinct in my body said, this should not be here. This should not exist. It was shaped vaguely like an old person, but it was pretending badly, like a child's drawing of a human being, just enough to suggest the rumor, like it was trying to wear the camp's ghost story as a costume. And as I stared at it, I knew two things with absolute clarity. First, I knew I was looking at a demon. I didn't reason my way to that. It was just this instant, wordless knowing. Whatever it really was, in some technical sense, that's what every part of me understood it to be. And I could feel, almost like heat on my skin, how much it hated me. It's hard to convey that part. Hatred like that doesn't feel like anger. It feels ancient, personal, like it already knew my whole family's pain and wanted more. Second, I knew I was completely safe. That sounds contradictory, but both things were somehow true at once. As terrified as I was, there was this other feeling wrapped around me, deep and solid. The best way I can describe it is this. Imagine you're a little kid, and your dad is holding you while you look at a tiger on the other side of thick glass. The tiger is real. It's dangerous. It would absolutely kill you if it could, but you know it can't touch you. That's how it felt, except way more intense. In that moment, I knew God was with me. Not as an idea, but as a presence as real as that thing in front of me. Only bigger, stronger, and utterly unafraid. So there I was, boiling in my own sweat, staring at this cutout of emptiness that hated me, and at the exact same time wrapped in this unshakable certainty. It cannot touch you. You are mine. You are safe. And then I passed out. I actually remember the sound of my body hitting the mattress, that dull thump as I fell back. Then nothing. I woke up the next morning like it was any other day at camp. The light came in through the window. Girls were getting dressed, talking, laughing. For a second I wondered if I'd dreamed it, but my body knew better. I could feel it in my muscles, in the way my chest tightened when I glanced toward that hallway. I wanted to ask, did anyone see anything? Did anyone wake up last night? I didn't. I was too afraid they would laugh or tell me it was just a bad dream, or worse, that they would somehow blame me, say I must be so sinful that I attracted something evil. That kind of thinking wasn't unusual in the world I grew up in. It was the last day of camp, thank God. I didn't have to sleep in that bunk again, and I absolutely refused to ever go back there. I never did. For a couple of years afterward, when I thought about it, the main thing I remembered wasn't the horror. It was that feeling of God's presence, how overwhelmingly safe I'd felt in that moment. It was like my brain focused on that part, maybe as a mercy. Then I hit around 13 or 14, and it shifted. It was like the emotional filter wore off. The memory of that thing became sharper, more vivid, and the horror of its wrongness hit me full force. I think, in a way, God gave me a buffer when I was younger so I wouldn't break under it. Interestingly, I was never afraid of seeing it in my dad's house. I just knew it couldn't come in there. For all his flaws, My dad's home felt spiritually guarded, like there was a line it wasn't allowed to cross. Over the years, I've tried to explain it away to myself. Maybe it was some kind of fever, or a hallucination, or sleep paralysis without the paralysis. I've had plenty of nightmares and weird dreams. But this doesn't sit in the same category. It's the only thing in my life that still triggers that PTSD-type response, even decades later. I've had other supernatural experiences too, ones I didn't ask for and didn't enjoy, but nothing has ever matched that night. Fast forward many years. I'm married now. Let's call my husband Daniel, and we have kids. One evening, when my oldest son, we'll call him Eli, was about 4, he was playing in the living room with his favorite little hat on. Out of nowhere, he froze, went pale, and started crying. I rushed over and asked what was wrong. Through his tears, he said, "The black shadow man took my hat off." That was all he could really explain at that age, a black shadow man. But the look on his face, this deep, cold terror that didn't match a normal childhood scare, hit me like a freight train. I knew, in that deep, wordless way, that he had seen something like what I had seen. And this time, something in me snapped in a different direction. Not fear, anger. I felt violated, furious. How dare it come into my house and scare my child? Generations of abuse and spiritual mess in both my family and Daniel's, and now this thing wanted to keep playing with us like we were toys. I stood there in my living room, shaking, and I told it, out loud and with every ounce of authority I had in Jesus' name, to leave and never come back. I meant it. I wasn't polite. I was spitting mad. And it left. Eli calmed down. He never saw it again. None of my younger kids have ever experienced anything like that. I don't fully understand the mechanics of any of this, but I'm doing everything I can to break the cycle of abuse and whatever spiritual junk has been attached to it. Once, I met a pastor, let's call him Pastor Ben, who shared that he had seen a demon once. He described it in more traditional, demonic terms, but when he talked about it, his voice went hoarse and his eyes had this haunted, distant look. And I recognized that look. He talked about that same, "it shouldn't exist" feeling, and I thought, you've seen it too. Maybe not the same shape, but the same kind of wrong. I didn't tell him my story. I've only ever told Daniel and one of my brothers, Luke. I don't think either of them really knows what to do with it. It's hard to talk about without breaking down, and crying in front of people over something this strange can feel humiliating, because it is terrifying to live with the knowledge, at least from my experience, that there are ancient, malevolent, invisible things out there, and that if they could, they would absolutely destroy us. I can't prove any of this to you. I don't expect everyone to believe me, but you asked for the story, and this is how it happened to me, as honestly as I can tell it. What I hold on to, more than the terror, is that other certainty from that night, that I was not alone, and that I was protected, that whatever darkness exists, it's not the strongest thing in the room. And now, as an adult, I fight back by loving my kids well, by refusing to perpetuate abuse, by drawing hard lines in my home, both practical and spiritual. Maybe that's one of the ways the cycle really breaks. So, yeah. That's the night something cut itself out of the dark and walked toward my bed. And the night I learned that even in the absolute worst wrongness, there was a presence that would not let me go. So, yesterday was my 30th birthday, and honestly, it was rough. By the time the night rolled around, the kids were finally tucked into bed. My daughter, Lila, and my little boy, Jame. The house was quiet in that way it only is when you know everyone's actually asleep. My partner, Marco, and I flopped down on the couch to watch some mindless TV. He didn't last long. Within 10 minutes, he was out cold, head tilted back, mouth slightly open, remote slipping from his hand. I remember looking at him and thinking, of course, even tonight, I'm alone with my thoughts. As the episode went on, the whole day just settled on me. Every little disappointment, every, "oh, we'll celebrate properly later," every forgotten text, every half-hearted happy birthday that felt more like an obligation than love. It all just stacked up inside my chest. And then it cracked. I started crying. Not the cute, single-tear movie kind. I mean full-on, ugly crying. The kind where your chest hurts, and you're trying not to be loud because you don't want to wake anyone, but you can't really stop once it starts. The only light in the house was coming from the TV. From where I was sitting on the couch, I could see straight into the dining room. It's open concept, with this little overhang from the ceiling and a narrow shelf where I keep a few family photos. Beyond that, through the doorway, I could see into the kitchen and just barely make out the back door. Last week, when Lila finished her first week back at school, I bought her 3 helium balloons as a little "you did it" surprise. By last night, they were half deflated and kind of just existing in random spots around the house. One was on the floor to my left, one was caught between the blades of the dining room ceiling fan. The fan was off. And another was sort of leaning against one of the dining chairs, right near the kitchen doorway. I'd been crying so hard my eyes were blurry, but I thought I saw this tiny flash of light in the dining room. For a second, I figured it was just the TV reflecting off something, one of the kids' toys, maybe a picture frame. But then I noticed the balloon near the kitchen doorway. The string was moving. At first I thought, okay, maybe the air conditioner kicked on weirdly, because we have central air and it was running. But none of the other balloons were moving, not even their strings, just that one. I stared at it, and the longer I watched, the more I realized the balloon string wasn't just swaying, it was gliding. The balloon started to move across the floor, slowly, deliberately, not bobbing around like it was caught in some draft, but almost like someone had a hold of the string and was gently pulling it. It came closer and closer. My heart was pounding, but a part of me was still trying to rationalize it. It'll stop at the little drop between the dining room and living room, I thought. That tiny lip where the ceiling lowers and the shelf with the photos sticks out. It makes a kind of boundary between the rooms. The balloon did pause there, right at that point, as if it had bumped into something. For a second I thought, see, there you go, it's done. But then, so slowly I could track every inch, the balloon started to lower itself. The top of it gently tapped against the underside of that little shelf, almost like it was figuring out how to get through. And then, inch by inch, it slipped into the living room. The balloon kept gliding toward me, right across the room. No wobbling, no weird zigzags, just a soft, straight line in my direction. It stopped when it was directly in front of me, hovering between me and the TV. And then it shifted slightly to the left. The string brushed against my left hand. I actually gasped. I didn't move my hand. I didn't move anything. I just stared. The balloon floated back to center again, paused, and then shifted to the left one more time. This time the string lifted up and tapped my hand again, a little firmer, like a nudge. It felt intentional. I don't know how else to describe it. It didn't feel random. It didn't feel like air currents or physics or whatever explanation my brain usually runs to when something weird happens. It felt like someone was going, hey, I'm here. Look at me. The only thing I could think to do was reach out and grab the string. So I did. I wrapped my fingers around it and just held on. My hand was shaking. I don't even know if I was breathing at that point. I kept glancing over at Marco, still slumped on the couch, completely oblivious. I tried nudging him with my elbow. Nothing. I tugged his arm. Nothing. Finally, I kind of half-whispered, half-hissed his name until he startled awake. He blinked at me, confused, and said, "Why are you holding a balloon?" I was still clutching the string like it was a lifeline. I told him what happened. The flash, the balloon moving across the rooms, the way it tapped my hand. I was talking fast, probably not making sense, still on the edge of laughing or crying or both. He just stared at me for a second, and then he said, "Man, I wish I'd been awake. I bet you looked so freaked out." And that was it. No big reaction, no, "Oh my God," just that. I kind of wanted to smack him with the balloon if I'm being honest. Later, after he drifted back to sleep and the house got quiet again, I sat there holding that balloon and replaying everything in my head. The awful day, the loneliness, the way I'd been sitting there thinking, does anyone actually care that it's my birthday? And then that balloon, one that had been sitting in another room for days, somehow made its way to me, stopping right at my hand, twice. Look, maybe there's some totally normal explanation. Maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and talk myself out of it. But sitting there in the dark, with my cheeks still damp from crying and my fingers wrapped around that string, it didn't feel like a draft or an accident. It felt like someone or something on the other side saw how much that day hurt and wanted to make sure I got at least one birthday balloon anyway. Okay. Let me take you back for a second. I was in middle school, maybe 12 or 13, when this all really started. A friend of mine, Maya, invited me over to her place after school. You know how it is at that age. Any excuse to hang out away from parents and homework sounds amazing. We get to her house and she introduces me to her older brother, Leo. Super chill guy, a little quiet. Kind of had that seen some stuff vibe even back then. They're walking me around the house, showing me the living room, the kitchen, the backyard. Normal tour, right? Then Maya goes, totally casual, "Oh, by the way, our house is haunted. Just a heads up." I laugh, because of course I do. And then Leo chimes in, like he's just confirming the weather. Yeah, his name's Adrian. Like, they knew the ghost's name. They said it the way you'd talk about a weird neighbor. They tell me a couple of quick stories, but honestly, I didn't really buy it. I went home that night thinking, cute family ghost bit, very on brand for them. And that was that. Nothing happened that day. The second time I went over, though, that's when it got real. We were hanging out in this back room they had. It kind of doubled as a game room and storage. The walls were lined with these tall, old mirrors. There were a few people there that time. Me, Maya, Leo, and a handful of our other friends. We were just in little clusters, chatting about school, music, crushes, dumb stuff. At some point, I kind of spaced out and glanced at one of the mirrors across the room. And I see someone staring straight at me. At first, I think it's just one of the guys standing behind me, so I kind of shift, expecting the reflection to move. But it doesn't. Everyone in the room is moving, talking, laughing, and this one figure in the mirror is perfectly still, locked on me. That's when my brain does that little click of, oh, that's not right. I focus and I realize I'm not looking at a normal face. It's like there is a person-shaped figure, but the face is just wrong. It's like it's been torn away or erased, replaced with raw, bloody skin and these bloodshot eyes staring into me, like I'm the only thing it can see. And my body just goes cold. I sort of jerk back and whisper, "What the?" Probably louder than I thought because suddenly everyone notices something's off. I shuffle over to Leo, trying not to completely lose it, and I tell him what I saw. He gives me this look that's half, I'm not surprised, and half, yep, that tracks. And he just says, "Oh, you saw Adrian." I remember just going, "Excuse me? What?" in my head. My friends crowd around, asking what happened, why I freaked out, and I'm trying to explain it while my heart is in my throat. And they're all a little scared too, because even if you don't see it yourself, you can feel when someone's not faking that kind of fear. Later, when things calm down a bit, Leo opens up more. He tells me that he's been dealing with this spirit for a while. It wasn't just random sightings. Sometimes they'd straight up fight. He talks about waking up paralyzed, having nightmares, feeling this presence try to push him around. And then he tells me he'd learned ways to protect himself. Spiritual stuff, shielding, visualization, calling in protection. And something about that just hooks me. I'd always been curious about the other side, but hearing it from someone my age, someone who had that steady, matter-of-fact tone, it lit something up in me. That was kind of the start of my own spiritual deep dive. Fast forward a couple of years. Around that time, I run into Leo again at school. We end up talking in the hallway, and I ask him, kind of casually, "Hey, how's the whole Adrian situation?" He sighs and tells me, "It's better sometimes, but he still shows up. He still messes with me." And I don't know what came over me, but I just said, "Okay, then let's get rid of him." We sit down and basically brainstorm like we're working on a group project. Not for math, but for banishing a ghost. I share some of the techniques I'd been practicing, and we come up with this idea. I'd use a focused visualization to not only confront Adrian, but to move him, like relocate him to a place where he can't find his way back. Another realm, another plane, however you want to word it. So I go home and I spend a whole week meditating specifically on this. Not just calming my mind, but building up energy, intention, and clarity about what I want to do. Every session is like training for a fight I know is coming. After that week, I decide, tonight's the night. I go to bed, but I don't actually go to sleep. I lay down, close my eyes, and drop into meditation. About 3 hours of deep focus. I bring up every bit of energy I'd been saving, every tool I'd learned. In my mind, I visualize Adrian clearly. I visualize surrounding him in light, pulling him out of that house, and sending him far away, into a realm where he can't track the way back, where he's contained, not tortured, but gone from here. When I feel it's complete, I just let myself drift off and fall asleep. The next morning, I find Leo and ask him, "Hey, how's the house feel?" He kind of frowns and says, "Different. I don't know how to explain it yet. I'll let you know." A week passes. Then he comes back to me and says, "It's weird, but I think he's gone. The house feels light, quiet, peaceful." I go over a little while after that, and I can feel it too. The place that used to have this heavy, watched feeling now feels normal, safe even. We talk about it years later, and the story is the same. No escalations, no creepy encounters, no more battles. As far as we can tell, the house is clear. So we kind of close that chapter. Years go by, 10, maybe more. I've moved, grown up, lived a whole life since then. Adrian is more of a story I tell than anything I actively think about. One night, I remember it really clearly. It's around 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm at this 24-hour diner with one of the friends who'd been there in that mirrored room all those years ago, and with my girlfriend at the time. Let's call him Jared. We're all exhausted, eating pancakes and fries at some ridiculous hour, the way you do after a long night. The conversation drifts, and I start telling Jared the whole story from the beginning. The house, the mirrors, Adrian, the meditation, the banishing. He remembers me freaking out back then, remembers the vibe in the room. but he says he never saw the spirit himself. He tells me, "I didn't see what you saw, man, but watching you lose color in your face like that still gives me goosebumps." He listens to the whole saga, including the part about cleansing the house and how it stayed peaceful. He's skeptical, but in a friendly way. More like, wild if true, you know? And that's fine. It's a ghost story. People will believe what they believe. We finish eating, pay the bill, and head home. Around 4 a.m., my girlfriend and I crawl into bed. The TV is on at the foot of the bed, kind of humming in the background. Closet is to my left, bedroom door to my right. She's curled up beside me. It's one of those moments where everything feels normal, cozy, quiet. I eventually drift off. The first thing I notice is this sense of alarm. Not anxiety, like actual alarms. It's like invisible sirens are going off. I can hear something like warning bells, and there's this low, dangerous growling, like a big dog is somewhere just out of sight. I turn toward the closet, and that's where he comes in. This black silhouette, humanoid, dense, heavy, pushes its way out of my closet and rushes straight at me. There's no build-up, no slow horror movie reveal. 1 second he's there, the next he's on top of me, pinning me down while I'm lying on my back. I can't move. One of his hands clamps over my mouth. The other crushes down on my groin. And I feel it. Real, sharp pain that shoots through my body. Not dream pain, not imaginary. It's like someone kneed me there as hard as they could. We're face to face, and even though his body looks like a shadow, the face is suddenly clear. That same awful, torn, bloody skin, and the red, furious eyes from the mirror all those years ago. And the look he gives me says everything. I found you. I'm back. You didn't get rid of me. For a split second, I feel that old fear. But then all the training kicks in. I shove my focus inward and push out this surge of white light. A shield, a bubble, whatever you want to call it. I throw it up around me with everything I've got. There's this tug-of-war feeling, like he's trying to claw his way through it, still pressing down on me, still fighting. It feels like it goes on forever, but if I had to guess, maybe a minute. A very long minute. And then, suddenly, something shifts. I feel another presence behind him. I don't see it clearly. It's more like a knowing, but I feel hands grab him from behind. The pressure on my chest, my mouth, my body eases up as he's yanked backward, away from me, back toward the closet. They drag him away, and he's pulled back through the closet, gone. And then I slam back into my body. I wake up in my bed, gasping. The first thing I feel is the pain in my groin, like I'd just been kicked there. My whole body is buzzing, like every cell is vibrating, and I'm covered in goosebumps from head to toe. The TV is still on. My girlfriend is still asleep next to me. The room is the same, but I'm not the same. It takes me about 10 minutes to steady my breathing, to stop shaking. And here's the weird thing. I'm not exactly scared. I'm shocked. Stunned. It's like my brain is going, did that really just happen? Over and over. After a while, the vibration calms down. The pain fades. I say a quiet little prayer or intention for protection, thank whatever pulled him off me, and eventually, I just roll over and go back to sleep. To this day, I haven't seen Adrian again. Maybe that was his way of saying, you didn't erase me, I just moved. Maybe it was some kind of unfinished business between us. I don't have every answer. But I do know this. That whole journey, from the mirrors in that back room to the years of meditation, to that astral fight in my bedroom, changed how I see the world. It made the spiritual realm feel less like a concept and more like a place I'd actually been. And whether you believe every part of it or not, I can tell you this much. Speaking to you right now, it felt real. It still does. So, for as long as I can remember, weird stuff has just kind of followed me around. When I was little, it wasn't the TV that turned itself on at night. It was this old radio in my room. I'd wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning to some scratchy music or people talking. The knob turned all the way up, and I'd be too scared to get out of bed to shut it off. And then there were the imaginary friends. Only they weren't very imaginary, because my older brother Jonah saw them too. We described the same figures, the same clothes, the same way they'd stand in the doorway. After a while, it got to the point where strange things were just normal. Annoying sometimes, but familiar. In this house, the one I live in now, there's one presence that's been around as long as I can remember. Out of everything that's drifted in and out of here, this one has stayed. For simplicity's sake, I call him the Old Man. My little brother prefers to call him Mr. Ellis, like he's some grumpy neighbor who never moved out. Either way, we're pretty sure he lives in the downstairs area. He mostly hangs around the lower level of the house, near the den and the little guest room down there. You can hear him walking around, a slow, steady shuffle, like someone wearing heavy slippers. The floor creaks in certain spots, and you get used to recognizing the pattern. Step, step, step. He's never actually spoken to me, not directly, but he clearly has opinions about certain people. When my mom's best friend, Carla, stayed with us for a while, things got tense. She'd do laundry in the small bathroom where we keep the washer and dryer, and almost every time she was in there alone, something would start banging on the pipes in the wall. Hard. She swore up and down that she heard a man's voice once, right behind her ear, telling her, "Get out." Not yelling, just low and sharp, like a warning. Nobody else in the family has ever heard him say that. The worst we usually get is our names whispered from the hallway or from the bottom of the stairs. And honestly, half the time I'm not even sure it's him. This house is like a paranormal group project. Too many participants, not enough roll call. Personally, I don't think the Old Man is bad. If anything, he's been weirdly considerate with us. When I used to sleep in that guest room off the downstairs den, I'd come home from school to an empty house almost every day. I'd throw my backpack on the floor, flop on the bed for 5 minutes, and immediately pass out for 2 hours. I was a mess about sleep, staying up too late, getting up too early, living on naps. Sometimes I'd be so tired I wouldn't even bother turning off the overhead light. I'd just crash with it blazing in my face. But here's the strange part. If I fell asleep with the light on, there was about a 90% chance I'd wake up later in the dark, covers pulled halfway up, room quiet, and the light switched off. At first, I thought it was my mom, but when I asked her, she just rolled her eyes and said, "If you're tired, go to bed earlier. I'm not your maid." She wasn't exactly the tuck you in and turn off the lights type. My dad swore he wasn't the one either. His attitude was always more like, "You'll learn when you're exhausted enough." By that point, both of my brothers were barely home. Work, friends, their own lives. And they've never been the type to sneak in just to quietly flip my light off and then deny it for years. If anything, they would have bragged about being sweet for once. So that left, well, him. It sounds silly, but in my head it became this unspoken ritual between us. I'd crash, he'd take care of the lights. That's what made the whole Carla situation confusing for me. Because if he's some kind of guardian, why was he so harsh with her? She's not a bad person. She's actually really kind, a little anxious, and definitely not someone who deserved to be scared out of a laundry room. And the thing is, she never actually saw him. She only heard the banging in that voice. So I can't even say with total confidence that it was the old man. It could have been something else entirely. This house has layers. Not everything here feels like him. Still, whenever I think about it, that's the part that sticks with me. The contrast. The gentle, almost fatherly act of turning my lights off so I sleep better. Versus the sharp, cold, get out someone threw at Carla while she folded towels. So where does that leave me with him? Honestly, I still don't know. Some nights, when I'm walking past the bottom of the stairs, and I hear those familiar slow footsteps in the den, I'll just say, "Hey, old man," under my breath. I never get an answer, but the house feels less empty after I do. I don't bother trying to convince myself it's all in my head anymore. I've had too many shared experiences, too many little patterns that don't line up with old pipes or the house settling. At some point, you just accept that not everyone you live with is technically alive. And I guess that's why I'm telling you this. Because I can't be the only one who's grown up like this, where the paranormal isn't some big dramatic horror movie event. It's just part of the background of your life. Like traffic outside your window, or the train that always passes at 3 a.m. So now I'm curious, how many of you have your own old man? Someone, or something, that's just quietly existed alongside you. Not quite friend, not quite stranger, but still, somehow, part of home. So, let me tell you about something that actually happened to me. It sounds made up, I know. If someone else told me this, I'd probably raise an eyebrow too. But I promised myself as a kid that I would never forget it and never doubt it. So here we are. I grew up in Portugal, and back then I barely knew a word of English. Maybe hello and okay, and that's being generous. Anyway, when I was a kid, my mom, her name's Carla, loved watching these medical reality shows. You know, the ones where people go through big surgeries and they show everything. We'd usually be in the living room after dinner, the TV on, lights a bit dim, me half playing, half watching beside her on the couch. On this particular day, there was an episode about a man getting some kind of stomach surgery. I remember they showed him lying on the operating table, all covered in those blue sheets except for the area they were working on. The doctor was explaining what they were going to do. At least that's what I assume now, because back then the captions were in English, and I technically didn't know English. The moment they started cutting, I panicked. I didn't want to see it. So I did the obvious thing. I turned my head away. But the image didn't go away. I thought, okay, weird. Maybe it's just a reflection or something. Maybe my glasses are doing something strange. I used glasses then, and still do, so that was my first idea. So I take off my glasses. Still seeing it. The exact same view as if I were looking straight at the TV. The cut, the instruments, the surgeons moving around. I think, fine, I just won't look at anything. I squeeze my eyes shut, really hard. Like really pressing them closed until it almost hurts. Still there. Same scene, clearer than any dream I've ever had. Now I'm starting to get scared. I shove my face into a pillow, pressing so hard I can barely breathe. I cover my ears with my hands, then with the pillow too, like I'm trying to smother the sound and the image at the same time. The living room fades behind me as I get up and walk out, but the surgery doesn't. I go to the hallway. Still there. Same angle, like I'm watching through an invisible TV in my head. And it's not just the video. I can hear it. The beeping of the machines, the soft murmur of the doctors, the awful wet sounds. Even when I cover my ears as hard as I can, the sound doesn't really get quieter. It's more like it's inside my head than outside. At this point, I'm a little kid trying every trick I can think of. No glasses, eyes shut, pillow, leaving the room, nothing works. And here's the part that really stuck with me. The images in my head would change, just like a normal TV show. Camera angle shifts, close-up, then wider shot, different parts of the surgery. And every time I got desperate enough, I'd peek back into the living room and look at the actual TV. It was the same. Exactly the same. Whatever angle I had seen in my head a second before, that's what was on the screen. And remember, I didn't speak English. But in my head, the captions at the bottom of the image were clear enough that I could follow what was happening. They made sense in some strange way, like I was understanding the meaning without really knowing how I was doing it. Completely normal, like it's just another evening show. I begged her, "Mai, please, can you turn it off? Please, I don't want to see it anymore." She kind of half laughed and said something like, "It's just a show, Miguel. Don't be so dramatic," and kept watching. So I'm stuck there with this movie in my head that I cannot switch off. Finally, after what felt like 10 full minutes of this, the surgery ends. In my head, it ends first. The scene changes, the doctors step back, they start showing the patient being moved or something like that. And when I open my eyes and look at the TV, there it is. Same moment, same scene. When it was all over, I wasn't crying or screaming or anything like that. I was just very, very quiet. Even as a kid, I knew something about that was off. Not like normal, I got scared of a TV show off, but I might not believe myself later off. So I did this really strange thing for a child. I made a promise to my future self. I remember thinking, very clearly, listen, one day you're going to grow up. You're going to tell yourself this was just your imagination, or that you remembered it wrong. Don't do that. Don't forget this. And don't call yourself a liar. So I promised I would never forget that day, and I would never doubt it really happened, exactly the way I remembered it. And now, looking back, it still feels just as bizarre. Like one of those stories people tell about ghosts or aliens, things you can't prove, things that sound ridiculous when you say them out loud. I get it if you don't believe me. Honestly, I wouldn't blame you. But that kid in the hallway, with his face buried in a pillow, fighting a TV that followed him around his own house, he made me promise. So I keep that promise. So, let me tell you about the house I grew up in. We had 2 bathrooms. Downstairs was the real bathroom. Big, bright, warm, with all the nice stuff in it. That's where everyone showered, did their makeup, all of that. And then there was the upstairs bathroom. Calling it a bathroom is generous. It was this tiny, smelly little room at the end of the hallway, right at the top of the stairs. The door stuck when you opened it. The floor was always weirdly cold, and the small window was covered with this warped, yellowing glass that made the daylight look sick. Even at noon in the summer, it felt like twilight in there. The light switch almost never worked. You'd flick it up and down, hear this faint buzzing, and nothing. If it did come on, it was this weak, flickery glow that made everything look worse. Most of the time, it was just dark. Dark and quiet and wrong. Nobody liked that bathroom. The women in the house flat out refused to use it. My older brother Daniel and I would only go in there if it was some kind of emergency, like, it's 4 in the morning and the downstairs is too far and I might not make it, kind of emergency. For me, when I was little, that bathroom was pure nightmare fuel. There were a few nights, like 2 or 3 in the morning, when I'd wake up and really have to go. And going downstairs alone? That felt impossible. The staircase creaked, The living room was a huge black void, and my kid brain had already decided there were monsters waiting under every piece of furniture down there. So the logical choice in my mind was the horrible little upstairs bathroom right next to my room. I remember standing in that doorway sometimes, not even crossing the threshold yet, just listening. It was so quiet it almost rang in my ears. No cars outside, no TV, no pipes, nothing. My heart would be pounding and I'd think, just hurry, just hurry, just hurry. I'd step inside in the dark, feel my way to the cold sink, the cold edge of the tub, the cold toilet seat. I'd keep my back toward the hallway because, for some reason, that felt safer. But every single time, I'd get this feeling that something was behind me. Not like, oh, I feel a little nervous. I mean that full-body chill, hairs standing up, convinced that if I turned around I would see something I did not want to see. And there was this one image that just wouldn't leave me alone. My mom's bedroom was down the hallway, right across from the bathroom door. In my head, I'd picture her door, just slightly open. And around the edge of the door frame, I'd see hands. Dozens of them. Pale, thin hands, all pushing around that frame, fingers curling over the wood like they were trying to pull themselves through. They'd be reaching in, stretching out toward me. Every time I used that bathroom in the middle of the night, I felt like those hands were right behind me, creeping closer and closer. Not rushing, just slowly closing the gap, inch by inch. I never actually saw them, of course, but I felt them. I'd do my business as fast as humanly possible, and the second I was done, I would bolt. I mean full sprint out of that bathroom, down the hall, and straight into my mom's room. I'd dive into her bed, latch onto her like a koala, shaking and trying not to cry. She'd mumble, "You're okay, go to sleep," half asleep herself, and I'd lie there wide awake, convinced those hands were still out there in the hall, searching the dark for me. Fast forward a couple of decades. A few years ago, I was chatting with my sister, Nina, about that old house. We were just reminiscing, laughing about the terrible wallpaper, the noisy radiator, the way the front door never quite shut properly unless you slammed it. Then she goes, "Do you remember that gross little bathroom upstairs?" I laughed and said, "Oh my God, yes. That thing always smelled weird." Before I could say anything else, she goes, "I hated that bathroom. When I was a kid, I used to get so freaked out in there. I always imagined these hands, like dozens of hands, creeping around Mum's bedroom doorframe and reaching in to grab me. I'd freak out and run crying to her room." I just froze. I hadn't told her my version of that, ever. I hadn't told anyone. It was one of those childhood fears you assume is just your own overactive imagination, too silly to mention. So I kind of stared at her and said, "Wait, what did you just say?" She repeated it, laughing it off, like it was no big deal. Same hallway, same door, same hands, wrapping around the frame and reaching in. My stomach dropped. I remember this weird shiver running down my back. It wasn't even that I thought, "Oh, it must have been a ghost," or adding like that. It was more like, okay, what are the odds that we both imagined the exact same thing in the exact same place and never talked about it? After that, we started comparing notes about that house. Little things, strange moments, stuff we'd both kind of filed away as just me being weird when we were kids. The more we talked, the more we realized there were all these overlapping experiences we never shared with each other growing up. Odd noises, strange feelings, dreams that seemed to happen in the same parts of the house. That upstairs bathroom was just one piece of it. I still don't know what was going on there. Maybe it was just the way the house was laid out. Maybe the drafts and the bad lighting and the old pipes and that awful window all just combined to mess with our kid brains in the same way. Or maybe there was something about that little bathroom at the top of the stairs and that doorway across from it that wasn't quite right. All I know is, to this day, If I get up at 3 a.m. and walk past a dark open doorway, there's still a tiny part of me that expects to see fingers curling slowly around the frame. And every time, I walk just a little bit faster. So, let me tell you about something that happened at my cabin the other night. I've got this little wooden place right at the edge of the forest. My actual house is maybe a 10-minute walk away, but the cabin itself is basically hugging the tree line. It's where I go to unwind. There's a small garden, a patch of grass, some tomatoes, herbs. It's my happy place. And my animals know it too. I've got 3 cats, and they usually follow me there like a little furry parade. That evening, I did a quick head count. 1, 2. I realized I was missing one, Luna, the curious one. I shrugged it off at first, figured she was lurking under the porch or stalking some imaginary bug. It was around 9:45 p.m., already fully dark. The only light was from a few bright lamps mounted on the cabin and a string of warm bulbs I've got along the fence. Just enough that I could see what I was doing while I watered the tomatoes. My girlfriend, Mira, was standing a few steps away, scrolling on her phone and chatting with me about something random, what we'd cook this weekend or some show we wanted to watch. I remember I was rolling a cigarette, kind of half listening, half focused on the little ritual of it. And then I heard it. A meow. Not a cute one, not the feed me kind. It sounded wrong, like a cat in pain. It came from just beyond the gate that separates the yard from the forest. You know when your brain just switches modes? That's what happened. I stopped what I was doing and looked toward the trees. I said, "Did you hear that?" And Mira frowned and said she thought it was Luna too. So I opened the gate and stepped into the forest. The second I passed through, it felt darker, like the light from the cabin just dropped off behind me. I took a few steps in, and then I heard the meow again, this time farther off and a bit quieter, like it had moved to my left. I called back over my shoulder that I was going to check it out. Mira stayed in the fenced area. She doesn't like walking in the woods at night as much as I do. The ground slopes downhill behind the cabin, so I started walking down the path. I know that forest like the back of my hand. I've been wandering around there since I was a kid, but that night it felt different. Heavy, like the air itself was paying attention. I kept calling, "Luna, Luna, where are you?" Then I heard it again. This third meow, man, it made my stomach drop. It sounded like a cat that had just been hurt badly, like that horrible choked noise an animal might make when it's dying. It came from somewhere down the hill in front of me, then cut off completely. Silence. No rustling, no snapping twigs, no retreating animal. Just nothing. My heart started racing, and I remember thinking, a fox got her, or a dog, or something. I picked up my pace and went deeper downhill. The farther I went, the more closed in everything felt. There were bushes all around me, branches brushing my shoulders. I turned in a slow circle, trying to figure out where that sound had come from. That's when I heard it. A very soft meow, right next to me. Like, right there, just off my left side. Only this time, the sound was wrong in a completely different way. It wasn't just weak like a hurt animal. It sounded off, almost like someone doing an impression of a cat, like a person trying to mimic a meow, but not quite getting it right. The second that sound hit my ears, every hair on my body stood up. I didn't even have time to think about what it meant. My body just reacted. Goosebumps, chills, this heavy feeling in my chest like my instincts were screaming at me. Something is not okay. And suddenly, no more meowing. At that point, it felt like the forest was holding its breath. I decided, okay, that's enough, and turned to head back uphill. While I was climbing, I kept calling out to Mira. I must have shouted her name 4 or 5 times, loud. And here's the thing about that forest. It's insanely acoustic. If you yell once, people in the village, almost a mile away, can sometimes hear you. It's like the sound bounces around perfectly. But she never answered. Not once. I made it back up to the top of the hill, breathing hard, and then I see her, Luna, calmly trotting toward me from the opposite direction, from near the cabin. Tail up, eyes bright, totally fine. She had never been down the hill at all. I just froze for a second, staring at her. That's when my brain really started stitching everything together. If Luna was up here the whole time, who, or what, had I followed down into the woods? I walked back through the gate, and Mira looked at me like, where the hell did you go? She told me she'd been calling my name over and over, getting worried because I wasn't answering. That freaked me out even more, because I hadn't heard a single thing from her. Not one word. Meanwhile, I'd been yelling for her too, and she swore she didn't hear me. So there we were, maybe 100 feet apart, in a forest where sound usually travels ridiculously well. And somehow, neither of us could hear the other at all. That silent pocket around me in the woods, that fake-sounding little meow right beside my ear. The fact that my cat, the one I thought I was saving, had never even been there. I've spent my whole life in forests. Night hikes, camping, hunting, just wandering around. I don't spook easily. I know what foxes sound like. I know what owls sound like. I know all the usual weird noises. But that night, that didn't feel like usual weird. Sometimes I sit and replay it in my head, and every time I hit that moment, the soft, human-ish meow right next to me, and the way my body reacted before my brain did, I get those same goosebumps all over again. Luna was fine. I was fine. Nothing actually happened, if you look at it that way. But still, something out there in those woods was meowing at me. And whatever it was, it wanted me to go deeper,